listeners. My name is George. I'm a myotherapist and personal trainer. I will be interviewing Damon Hayhow today. Damon, for the listeners, could you please introduce yourself?
I'm a guy who lifted some heavy barbells and things over a number of years and got a couple of trophies and things for it, and painted myself brown a few times and squeezed my muscles in front of some judges, and that seemed to go down pretty well. So I've won the Australia in the IFBB decades ago, and I've set dozens of national Australian powerlifting records, won the nationals in powerlifting, and then I became the president of the World Powerlifting Congress in Australia, introduced Australia's first world records, then created Recomp, which is the professional association for body recomposition specialists, so that they can actually be insured for training people properly. I brought the International Society of Sports Nutrition to Australia and got people and personal trainers insured for prescribing nutrition, and yeah, that sort of stuff. So basically lived a very dull life around barbells and gyms and sweating and food and kitchens and stuff.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, thank you for introducing. And I noticed that you used the word sort of dull there. And I think sometimes people looking from the outside can think, all of that stuff is quite dull. But I'm sure, Damon, you would have done all that because you have a serious passion and a love and an affection for helping others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's unfortunately it's been overcomplicated by some not so intelligent people who like to sound intelligent, and turned into some mysterious voodoo, weird, wonderful, wacky thing, when really it's just a case of the bleedingly freaking obvious. It's just eat clean food, lift heavy weights, watch yourself get stronger, watch that the numbers are actually progressing the same way that you would approach any other activity or sport. You have a goal in mind at the end, you quantify what that looks like, and then you put in place the steps to get there, and you measure incrementally as you go along the path whether or not you are going in the right direction or not. And if not, you change direction. And if you are, you go, cool, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And even though that's the same thing that we do in business, life, finance, sport, absolutely every activity that we get involved with, weight training, bodybuilding, body recomposition is the one area that has all just been completely thrown out the window. And it's like, nah, just go to the gym and smash myself, brah. Yeah. And I have my cheat days and refeeds and my deloads and all of this mindless crap. So the reality is that it doesn't have to take over your life. It's just, you're going to eat food anyway, so eat your food. You go to the gym a very few days per week. You put in some quality of effort. You lift heavy weights. The rest of it just happens. And so it is kind of dull. It's just not that. Yeah. It's just not that mystical, really.
It's not. Yeah. It's not that mystical. It isn't. And I'm hearing that. So with other people's methods, I know some of my clients will ask me the science behind things. They'll want me to double down and explain that. And I'm more than happy to do that. But they're not going to remember what I'm about to tell them anyway. And it is completely irrelevant because all we're going to do is just measure what happens before an intervention and after an intervention. So it does make logical sense. Damon, when did you first start sort of measuring your own progress with your strength training? Because Recompose hasn't been around forever. So how were you kind of tracking before that?
Well, the issue with me is that I absolutely sucked at bodybuilding. Like, I went to the gym because I was painful thin. I was 55 kilos at my current height. When the trainer gave me taught me how to bench press, I literally did a bar with a 2.5 each side, and you had to pull the 10th rep off of me. I was painfully weak and painfully thin. And I was looking around the gym, and it was very obvious that, the bigger the person, the bigger the weights that they lifted were, and that just made sense. And I could see what I was lifting and what they were lifting, and it was like, well, there's a long way between me and them, and I've got to get there. And it really was as simple as that. Like, right from the outside, it's like, why would I go from one workout to the next and not get measurably better than before? I'm so freaking weak. I'm so far behind. I don't have time to be getting workouts where I'm just spinning my wheels going nowhere. I need, big steps as often as I possibly can.
Yes.
And as soon as, and that's what made me give a damn about it. It's just sort of like, this is important. I suck. I hate sucking. I'm not a person who likes being really bad at something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see the muscle go on. So it made sense. The guy that I wanted to be eventually was going to be massively, ludicrously stronger than me. And that made particular sense to me, like it doesn't to a lot of other people, because I was so bad at this. It's like I was so pathetically weak. And so that's what, lit a firecracker under my ass to try to solve that problem. And straight away you look at the bodybuilder advice, where they just go, lift light weights, doesn't matter what you lift, do 20 sets of half-ass pumping around with short rest periods. And it's just like, man, I can't even bench press the empty bar if I'm a little bit tired. Like, I don't even have the option of doing this. I got to get stronger before I can actually do lots of sets, because the bar's too heavy by itself.
Yeah.
So straight away it was just sort of like, well, this is stupid. That doesn't make sense. And so it kind of went from there. And then the food thing was exactly the same, in that my first coachy guy gave me a diet, and it was substantially more food than I was eating before. But I come from small stock. I'm a genetically skinny person. I doubled my food intake and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so then I started measuring it, because it became rational to just sort of go, well, I don't just want to keep on wasting money on food and going through this discomfort to not make progress. So I'm going to write down a list of food to eat every single day. And then at the end of the week, or every day or every few days, I'm going to keep weighing myself. And if my weight isn't going up on that list of food, I'm going to add to that list of food. And if my weight isn't going up, I'm going to add to that list of food. And so right from the outset, it was a case of just a very logical, rational approach based on the fact that I don't accept mediocrity, and I'm not going to trust the process, which is the latest stupid half-ass path to nowhere cliche that's being banded around. It's just sort of like, oh, I can tell the process isn't working because I measured it. I'm not going to trust, in 6 months' time, I'm going to wake up and it's like, oh, I'm huge and strong all of a sudden. Like, no.
Exactly. And for those wondering about Recomposer that aren't currently using it, we have an estimated 1 rep max calculator assigned to each exercise. And this essentially dictates your failure point if you have trained to within the limit of your ability. So what Damon's saying is about knowing whether we're progressing. We don't need to wait 6 months. We get that validation each workout, each set, whether we are progressing or not. It's very, very black and white. Okay. And Damon, so for some of my listeners that are possibly, my clients, what I find is when they first come into the gym, say the limit of their ability is over here, they're over here. What I find is I can tell that they're training at about 40%, 50% of their capability. And this was the exact same for me when I went on board with Tom Brown. Was once I actually had weight and rep targets, I realized I hadn't been training. I thought I'd been training for over 10 years. I hadn't, right? So how can listeners and my clients bridge that gap between their 40% effort that they think is 100% and actually training to the limit of their ability?
The issue is, this is an academic mindset, okay? To draw an analogy, imagine driving a car around a racetrack and doing it based on what feels fast, okay? There's a limit that the car's actually technically capable of, and at the elite level of driving, you'll be sitting in the pits with your crew, with the telemetry, where they're showing you exactly where you braked, exactly where you accelerated, how much throttle you actually gave, etc., etc. There are numbers you can put to these things. You can measure absolutely everything. The issue is that when academics look at a successful lifter, they they look at what they can see, which is, well, his blood pressure goes up and his face turns red and he holds his breath and he grunts a lot. And all of these superfluous kind of secondary after effects become what they go, this is what hard training is. So people then go to the gym and they hold their breath and they make their face go red and they grunt lots and they pretend to struggle with the weight and they go, this is training hard. Like it's exactly the same as actually trying to lift the weight.
Mm.
And it's not. It's not about how you feel. The job actually when it comes to training is to try to make it as easy as possible, to use the technique and the state of mind that allows you to lift that weight with the most precision and the least possible discomfort that you can experience. So then you can add weight to the bar to make it hard again. It's like, I don't want it to be awful and suck and to feel bad and all. I want it to be as easy as it can possibly be. I put the weight on the bar to make it hard on myself.
Yes.
And if my blood pressure goes up and my face turns red and I grunt and my nose bleeds, it's sort of, I don't care. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to lift the weight. And so to answer the question, what can people do? It's stop bullshitting yourself that how you feel is what hard training is about. It's got nothing to do with it. It is about the performance. It's about looking around the world and just going, what are people of a similar dimension to myself capable of lifting? What's reasonable? But even more important than that is, what are people with the physique that I want capable of lifting? And not what are they lifting, because there's a lot of very, very lazy people who don't need to train hard in order to still get unbelievably strong and unbelievably muscular. There are some unbelievably genetically gifted people who train like absolute sooks and babies, the most pathetic training you'll ever see for the best physique you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you can actually get these people to actually legitimately access the strength their muscles are capable of and lift something heavy, they lift world record poundages. They're strong, they're just lazy. And there's a big difference between what you choose to lift and what you're capable of lifting. So what I'm saying is, look at the extremes. Look at the people with the physiques that you like, and then find the strongest of them and find what the best lifts that they've done to just go, oh, okay, that's where I'm going. And then it doesn't even matter what your maximum is right now so much, as a case of, like with myself, it hopefully lights a firecracker under your ass to just go, I'm so far from where I need to be. I got to get there quick smart. If I'm 200 kilos away from lifting the weights, the guy I want to, how many weeks? It's 200 weeks at 1 kilo a year. 1 kilo a week, sorry. That's 4 years straight on. I don't want to take 4 years. I want to be there yesterday.
Yeah.
So how do I get that weight on the bar? And, this unfortunately then gets misconstrued, because you get people going, it's not just about the weight that you put on the bar. And you go, no, it's not. Nobody said to you to do half reps with more weight. What we said is that if you take a squat as an example of it, if the guy you want to be or the girl you want to be can squat 300 kilos for 6 reps, and you're squatting 100 kilos for 6 reps, we're not saying put 300 kilos on your back, because you can't. What we're saying is, you can see where you're going, and that's got to be important. You need to learn to squat the only way you will be able to squat 300 kilos without injury. So you're not cheating. You're not doing reckless things. You're not being stupid. No one's saying to, injure yourself. What we're saying is that you need to know what you're actually training for, and you need to give a damn about it. And then all the rest of the questions can be answered, such as, is my 6 sets of 20 bouncing up and down like a kangaroo actually helping me squat 300 kilos for 6 reps? Probably not. Don't do it.
No.
So
Yeah.
it
So train
incorporates
like an
everything.
athlete. There you go.
Yeah. Think like an athlete. You need to be good at this activity. The form you use is of crucial importance in order to achieve performance. And that goal out there needs to be something that is real to you and matters to you. And then you figure out how to go about actually doing it.
Exactly. And Damon, all the sets in the lead up to being able to say, squat or hip thrust 300 kilos. You said in another podcast, someone asked you, okay, what cadence do I do it at? What tempo do I do it at? And you said to this person, you go as hard and as fast as you can. You don't think about that. You think about completing the range of movement that you're going to use. You're going to do that consistently and go as hard and as fast as you can. That way, each week you're comparing apples with apples, and you're not comparing apples with oranges, because you can't actually measure, oh, I've done a tempo rep of a 3 second negative. What if I'm fatigued on my eighth or ninth rep? I'm probably going to not do that tempo rep as the allocated
Well,
amount. You're right.
there
Mm.
is that, but there's an even simpler argument against the whole tempo rep thing as well.
Mm.
And that is that there's, for instance, taking, and I'm sorry to people who think this 300 kilos is just absurd. I'm using it as
Yes.
an example.
Yeah.
Maybe the goal's
100
100
kilos.
kilos.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's whatever it is.
60.
But yeah, but take any exercise and you just go, the person who can do 10 reps to failure on 100 kilos has absolutely no problem doing any speed of rep with 50 kilos. You don't need to train to do slow reps. You can already do slow reps. What
Yes.
you do makes you good at what you're doing, and there's nothing more complicated to it than that. So when people talk about these tempo reps being a way to blah blah, it's like, no, you're training to be slow. That's it.
Yes.
That's all you're training to achieve. You cannot exert 100% effort whilst compromising yourself to be slow.
Mm.
And what good is being slow? A person who can do slow reps on 50 kilos can't lift the 100 kilos, but the person who can do the 100 kilos can do the slow reps on 50 kilos. So if
Mm.
you can already do as slow a rep with any weight that you want to do anyway, why train for it?
Mm.
Training is about becoming able to do the thing that you aren't very good at right now or can't do right now. And so you solve that problem in any sport or activity. It's about fixing the thing that isn't working. So tempo reps, again, it's training to be slow. Why do you need to do that? You don't, so don't do it. You
Mm.
need to train to lift 100 kilos. And then if you think that there's benefit in doing slow reps on 50, you can do it then. But I guarantee you that you're not going to get to the 100 kilos by doing slow reps on 30 kilos and building it up to 50. You'll probably never build it up to 50. So,
No.
yeah, it can't be measured, and that's one stupid thing. But the bigger picture is when you're focused on achieving the strength level of the athlete that you want to look like
Mm.
for that physique, then the things that you do to get there will be logical, and you'll be able to look at them and just go, well, that's really dumb.
Mm.
And this actually fits into everything else too. Forced reps, for instance, so getting a spot on the bench press.
Mhm.
On the one hand, you could argue it's pushing beyond failure. It's not, still pushing to what you can do. But doing lots of forced reps is only training you to be good at forced reps. So the athlete that I want to be, for instance, who can, let's say, squat the 300 kilos for 6 reps,
Mhm.
I need to train my body to put 100% of its 100% into that set of squats. And when I do that sixth rep needs to be the absolute, there isn't a 1 kilo bit of energy left in the tank at the end of it. I just get the 6, I fall back, it's done. I'm 100% spent. Forced reps are teaching the body to keep reps in reserve at 99%, 98%, 97%, 95%, 90%. And you may have experienced this when working with people who have done a lot of forced reps. They hit failure on the bench press, which is the most popular to do forced reps with,
Mhm.
and they only need a kilo worth of force for one more rep, and then a kilo for another rep, and then 2 kilos for another rep, and 2 kilos for another rep. And you can spot them all day long, and the strength barely falls off as
Mm.
you keep spotting them and spotting them. You try spotting a top level power lifter or a power bodybuilder, someone who's trained heavy and strong. When they do their last rep, it is done. If you're going to help them on the next rep, you need to deadlift that sucker off of them. They've trained to access everything, which is really important. So I would say avoid forced reps as much as possible. Go to the limit of your limit, and you might get it wrong sometime and you need someone to help you up. That's cool. But don't train to get forced reps, because all it does is trains you to get good at getting help. It's not
Mm,
relevant to your goal. And that's how I assess every training technique.
mm,
Drop sets, supersets, giant sets, all of it. Why do I want to extend myself? I need to be able to put 100% into my 100% because the guy I want to be, the biggest problem and difference between him and me is not how many sets we can do, it's how much weight we can lift on the bar. That's it.
mm,
That's
mm.
the only difference. He has more muscle because he can lift more than me.
It's so true, Damon. It's so true. What you're saying there also, you've said this in another podcast, is at this point in time, I can already do volume for 6 days a week, 5 days a week. And
Your
that's,
grandma, yeah.
yes.
If the
And
weights
that's
are light
probably
enough, grandma can do 20 sets of chest 3 days a week if she wants to, if she's
exactly.
never trained before, you know?
But what can't
Anybody.
your grandma do?
Well, she can't bench 400 pounds
Yeah. And do you think
or
if you were to
40.
get it, yeah, and if do you think if you were to get her to try and do that 3 or 4 times a week, what do you think she's going to be able to hit her strength numbers?
Well, I mean, she'll initially, if you take a completely untrained person and you give them any kind of weight training,
Example, wrong example.
yeah, they're going to gain
Yeah,
some
yeah,
strength. It's
yeah.
not rocket science, and that's another one of these things.
Mm.
The old saying about who found what works for him. It's like, no, he got a result. It's really hard to eat food and train weights and take steroids in a lot of cases and not grow muscle. The
Yes.
question is, how efficiently do you do it? How far do you do it? Can you keep on doing it? Can you maintain it easily? Yeah.
These are the questions. These are the questions. How you arrive at the goal, I think, is also really crucial. One thing I've noticed with your methods, Damon, is that you were talking about a cut where I think you were on about sort of 5,000 calories. You decided that you were going to do a show in about 6 weeks' time. You reduced your calories by 200 each week. So you were getting on stage at 4,000 calories. And I actually just spent today, I was watching a couple people do their bodybuilding prep, and they're backstage, and they're depleted, they're this, they're that. There's this huge suffering. And that's something that I experienced as well in one of my first shows. I started out too fat, and obviously calories came down too low, lost function of my penis, didn't get it back for like 6 months. It was awful, right? When I did my most recent cut with Tom Brown, we finished my cut. We were on about 2,700 at the very, very end, and I was only there for about 1 week because we were lean enough. I was already down to 32 mils. So how I arrived at my goal was so crucial because now I'm 39 mils across 9 sites. I've gained 7 mils over the past. We're coming up to 7 months, right? Strength is up. Everything works. Everything worked back then. It's completely different. So, Damon, can you talk to me about how you have felt during your bodybuilding preps towards the end, and whether you have felt like there is a definite difference between most competitors and how they're depleted, and how you kind of feel when you're on stage?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm basically fine. I mean, you kind of there's two situations there. If I'm helping a person, and this applies to myself, it's like if I'm fat,
Mm,
however many weeks out from a bodybuilding competition, well, why would I want to compete? Like, either don't get fat in the first place, or don't give yourself this short period during which you need to lose a lot of fat to get down to the lowest possible body fat percentages.
mm,
So when you don't get fat in the first place, it's much easier to drop a little bit off the top and walk on stage not feeling any different than you did during the off season, because the off season you didn't look that much different. It's like you drop a little bit of water and a little bit of fat, a couple of kilos, and you stand on stage. And that like for my last prep that you're talking about, yeah, it was like I was 90, 96, 97 kilos, but about 6% body fat, you know, um, sort of
phenomenal.
that 6 8 weeks out,
Mm,
whatever it was. It's a long time ago now. But I was already lean, and I came in at 94, so it's like I lost 2 kilos. It didn't deplete because I don't
wow.
understand. Your body's 60% water. This whole idea of you need to get the water out before the show is just ridiculous.
Mm,
And also, in terms of the approach, when when you're healthy and you're consistent on your diet, when everything in your body is running absolutely swimmingly, the foods that you're eating digest perfectly for you, your body is trained to run on that food because you've been eating only that food for a very, very long time, then you don't retain water. You're dry all of the time. You're lean all of the time. And so then it's a case of dieting into the competition. Yeah, you drop a few calories down, just enough to drop the fat off the top. You're eating enough food still that you don't lose strength, which is why I'm able to set national records and win powerlifting competitions the week before the bodybuilding show, which was what we
Yes.
said off camera as something that I kind of got a name for years ago.
It's crazy.
And and it really wasn't. It was just a case of I'm still doing exactly the same thing. So the fat comes off of the top. I'm already dry. I was already lean. The body's not fighting back against me. I'm not beating the living crap out of it.
Yeah.
Overtraining, just overtraining, starving, doing all sorts of aerobic activity on top of it, not sleeping, and all of these things that people tend to do.
Mm.
So your body isn't in a state of inflammation, panic, and DEFCON 4,
Mm.
trying to stay alive despite the fact you're trying to kill it. And
Yeah.
then I didn't use diuretics, and I just walked on stage and won. And the muscles are full and round and hard because your body's not in that state of absolute stress.
Yeah. You haven't.
So in a lot of cases, the methods that people use are just crapshoot reactions to the bad reactions to the stupid thing that they did before. It's just this absolutely chasing your tail down a hole. Anyway.
No, and it makes perfect sense for listeners. When you are on stage, you want to have as much muscle as possible with as little body fat. So you want to be as strong as possible, because if you aren't as
Exactly.
strong as possible, your body's like, well, I don't need to have this muscle on my body. Let me get rid of it. It's damn expensive to run. So I'm going to take away the muscle that you're trying to show off when you get on stage. Logically, it just doesn't make sense. And this is why the volume method doesn't fit, because you're training yourself into a weakened state. Damon was saying before, we want to be a superior strength athlete when we're on stage, so we look like a superior strength athlete. It's very, very simple. Mm.
Yeah, the thing is, starting a competition prep, you again, I always start with the numbers. If I'm getting somebody ready for a competition, we actually get a spreadsheet, and we start, if it's a bodybuilding competition, so it's extreme, and I go, I want you to be 30 millimeters over 9 sites, so an average of 3 millimeters skin fold over each site.
Yeah.
I want you 30 millimeters 3 weeks before the show. Now that buys us a little bit of time if we're off target, and it also lets the body get used to being that lean. I won't get into that, but most coaches understand that the longer you can sit there, then the better you can look on competition day rather than having just arrived there. Anyway, so we go 3 weeks before the comp, 30 millimeters. Then I add 2 millimeters per week backwards. So if we start 20 weeks out, you go week 0, 30 mil, 1 week out, 30 mil, 2 weeks out, 30 mil, 3 weeks out, 32 mil, 4 weeks out, 34 mil, 5 weeks out, 36 mil, and so on and so forth, all the way back to the 20 week. So then we've got these very simple targets, and we then take stock of what weapons we have in the arsenal. We've got the calories that we're eating, which we can reduce. We've got the excuse me, the training volume that we're using, which we may increase. And then you've got the supplements that people may or may not be willing to take in order to accelerate the process. And the idea is that you want to burn your ammo as slowly and as late as possible. So
Mm.
if I can drop 200 calories out in the first week and just sail into the competition, and every week my millimeters hit the target, I'm not changing a damn thing, not using any supplements, not adding any, not doing any damn thing. It's just, it's working. Go another week. It's working. Go another week. As long as we're just ahead of target or on target every week and the trajectory is solid, don't do anything.
Mm.
And this is completely different to everybody else who does it totally blind, and they use the mirror, which is the worst freaking measuring tool you could possibly imagine.
Mm.
And and at the same time, though, to those people who are screaming that the mirror is the best tool and never lies,
Mm-hmm.
nobody said that you can't measure and use the mirror. I'm not saying you put numbers in a spreadsheet and don't look in the mirror. Of course you look in the mirror, but the numbers are what you base your decisions on.
Correct.
And so with that in mind, you the objective of the training at that point is whatever our maximum strength was on bench squat, deadlift, military press, our primary exercises, whatever those happen to be. We want to be matching those performances right up to the week of the competition, because that's the only measure we have in the gym that we haven't lost muscle. In the process of dieting into a competition, your muscles will deplete somewhat. It's just part of the process. They're not going to be maximally full of glycogen, water, etc. And you need to be able to determine when you're doing your body composition measurements whether the apparent muscle loss is simply water leaving the muscle or it's actually tissue loss, which is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way that you can do it, the only way that you can do that, you can go, well, if I lose muscle, I'm going to lose strength. And even the people who don't believe there's a relationship between strength and muscle, except if you lose muscle, you're going to lose strength.
Yes.
So if I can maintain my strength, I've done everything I possibly on those critical exercises, not the little biceps and triceps.
That's the main
on the big
yeah.
on the big movements. If I can maintain my strength all the way into the competition, then I'm doing everything as I possibly could, as successfully as I could with my training. If I increase my training and then my performances start dropping off, immediately I need to fix my training. I just broke something, and that's going to lead to bad places, because every kilo of muscle that you lose will show up first in lost performances. And that now is another kilo of weight you need to lose, which means you need to drop your calories another step. And the next thing you know, you've started the spiral downwards, all because you stupidly added training, which saw your performances drop off, and so on and so forth. So in terms of doing that, I use strategies even where, there will be, for an athlete who's really having to push it, it's getting really difficult. They started too fat, but were determined to do the competition, or they're not responding or something like that. They will have workouts, which is one set of deadlifts. It's like, that's all you do today. You go into the gym, you've got to hit your deadlift performance. The reason that I'm not giving you any other stuff around it is because you don't have the energy, and we need the performance. I don't want you distracted. You don't have the aggression. You don't have any of the other things. We need you to keep your deadlift performance up, because as soon as that drops off, every muscle in your body is just going, oh, cool, we don't need to be here anymore. He's not lifting those weights. We'll just exit stage left. And so you change the structure of your training to allow the person to get those performances.
Yes. So it sounds like, Damon, you're trying not to distract people from what matters the most, which is the key lifts. And what I'm hearing is the conventional deadlift is the most key lift.
Absolutely, yeah.
For maintaining
and it's
muscle.
and again, the people have been taught to look at these things backwards. So when I say that the deadlift is the most key lift, I'm not saying that it's impossible to build a physique without the deadlift, because of course it is. You don't need to deadlift. But what I'm saying is the deadlift is the very best tool that we have for measuring all over body strength. There's the least amount of skill required to do a deadlift. It's all just mental aggression and bloody mindedness to just keep on grinding all the way to the top. It's purely a function of how much muscle you have, because it basically requires every single muscle in your body, from your upper body. I mean, it's connected to your hands and your feet. It goes through everything. Yeah. So if your deadlift is being maintained, it's not that. It could be argued that it's not that is the thing that keeps your muscle, but it certainly tells you absolutely and irrefutably that you have not lost muscle, you have gained muscle. Because if you gain muscle, assuming it's evenly distributed over your body or anywhere that counts, it's going to show up on your deadlift. You'll pick up a heavier weight off of the ground. And if you lose muscle, you will not be able to pick up the weight off of the ground that you used to be able to. And it doesn't matter whether it's because you stupidly decided to run a half marathon every day thinking that it burns fat, or that you're on so low calories, whatever the reason is that you watch your deadlift performance falling off a cliff is still telling you the same damn thing. By the time you get to the stage, you will have lost most of your muscle.
Mm,
It's one of those, I understand the counter arguments where people want to go, how does it work? What makes the deadlift so special? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, it doesn't matter.
we've just
The
measured it.
issue
We
is,
just know that it is. Yeah.
that's right. If it's working, your deadlift is maintained or it increases. If it's not working and your deadlift is going down, you need to do something about your approach to the competition, because you
Mm.
now know that you are probably going to be losing fist loads of muscle. So
Exactly, exactly. And conversely, I'd like to add to that story. So in terms of it, it keeps us from losing our muscle, but conversely, we also gain a ton of muscle with the conventional deadlift. When just before I went to Tom Brown, I thought I was at my genetic potential. I was about 25 years old. I've been training for a while. My strength numbers weren't amazing, and I thought I was at my limit, and I was considering steroids. I was thinking, yep, that'll be the next thing, but why don't I just get a coach first and just sort of see how that goes? And we were conventional deadlifting, increasing the calories. I gained 6 kilos in 4 months with no body fat gain, and I was sitting there like, what the actual hell has just happened? Like, I was just shocked because those are steroid like results as a natural athlete. And that was all because, I mean, the suffering I went through with those deadlift sessions is something special. I did feel like a bit of a cripple there for the 4 months, but it was hell worth it, right? It was
injured,
hell worth
not
it.
in an injured way. It's just that it's
No,
absolutely brutal to every
brutal.
part of your
Mm,
body, and particularly your brain. It's like the day after a big PB on a deadlift, like a rep
mm.
set, and it's just, most people have the experience where it's like, my stomach can't satisfy my appetite. It's just,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
so hungry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm eating the food that was difficult to eat the day before that set of deadlifts, and the next day I'm hungry all day. I finish my meal and I'm looking around going, can I eat my next meal? Like, what the hell happened? It's the
It's
profundity of the effect on your body of deadlifts done properly
done
is
properly.
like,
Mm.
it's like most trainers will never ever understand, comprehend, or experience, because they just won't even come remotely close to the level of performance. And
No.
we probably should touch on that. Like, in terms of that level of performance, there are dozens of guys who've, this was back in the day before training was a fairly normal thing that most people in society probably have done or will do. Um, and and it was interesting because it was so much better before people had been trained to be geriatric cripple retards by slow, lightweight, pretend it's hard BS training. Because back then it was normal to get guys in on a fairly regular basis who'd never lifted weights before and have them pull 220 in their strength test, first ever workout. I would get them to squat first, then bench, then deadlift, so they're a bit tired.
Fatigued
And
as
we would
well.
build them up, and they'd pull 220, untrained, never done weights before in their first workout. And I know there'll be people squealing, oh my God, it's so dangerous. They would have broken their spine and all the rest. Not a one of them. They were strong dudes. I didn't give them 220 and see whether they could lift it. I taught them to deadlift and then built them up and built them up and built them up. And we did one rep, one rep, one rep, one rep, 10, 20 kilos at a time. They'd nail one. You'd say, do this, do that, change that. This was good. Get more aggressive, yada, yada, yada. Give them as much rest as they need. Keep going up and get them to 220 kilos. My biggest achievement in a workout, I had a guy who'd been training for 30 years.
Mm.
He'd trained with Louis Simmons and all of the guys over in the US. He was a US guy, and he was told that he was a big, weak bodybuilder and he was just never, ever going to be strong. He'd never deadlifted more than 200 kilos. And I got a 300 out of him on the first day. And
Oh,
he cried. He was like, I've been training for 30 years with the best people in the world, and they've all told me I was just weak. And it's
mm.
like, the guy was 115 kilos lean. It's like,
Whoa, that's a lot of muscle mass. For context, guys, Louis Simmons runs Westside Barbell, or used to run Westside Barbell, and is widely considered one of the greatest powerlifting coaches of all time, and has coached the strongest people in the world, right? And Damon saying this guy had spent time with him. This guy's deadlift wasn't over 200. He spent some
and
time with.
Charles Glass and all of these big name guys, he was very serious about it. And yeah,
That's crazy. That's
yeah.
crazy. I mean,
The thing
that says a lot about what is inside of our mind, right? And
But
then,
that's the thing. It's all up here. It's
yeah.
like it was never in the muscle. It's just the session went for about 3 hours, and it was just like telling the it's just, dude, you've got twice as much muscle as I have. You know, how
Mm,
could you possibly be so much weaker than me? There's this girl over here. She does 200 kilo deadlifts,
mm,
and this girl and this guy, and look at you. What do
mm.
you think all of your extra contractile tissue does? Nothing. It, it's made of peacock feathers. It's just there for Instagram prettiness and aesthetics, bruh.
Mm,
No,
mm,
it's contractile tissue. It contracts. The missing issue is this telling it to do the work. And when we
mm.
finally found the inner animal in him for 5 seconds, up that bar went, and there was more in it. It's just that he was so overwhelmed, and so, he was like he'd just done fire walking, you know.
Oh,
Um,
so Damon, you tell me, what was the cue that got him to lift this for coaches out there? Anyone listening to this?
I think I don't recall exactly, but I think I just abused the shit out of him. It was just arguing rationally and stepping up each one. It's like each one that went up, I'm like, see, it wasn't any slower than the one before it. It's like,
Mm,
this is the thing. Don't think about how it feels. I want you to lift as fast as possible.
mhm,
You've just done 140 kilos. 140 kilos will snap your spine if you're doing it badly enough.
mm,
It's still a lot of weight. If you
mhm,
don't break on 140 kilos, it's not likely that your form's so terrible that it's going to break on 160 kilos. And
mhm,
likewise, then 180 if you do 160. And so it was just stepping up and just going to him. It didn't slow down. And he
mm.
missed a couple of lifts in between, and I would yell at him, and I just go, "What are you fucking doing?" When you pull 220 and then 240 doesn't leave the ground, it's like you're bullshitting me. You
Yeah.
didn't pull that. The force that got 220 to the top would get 240 off the ground. It would get stuck under your knee, but it would leave the ground. So when
Yeah.
it doesn't leave the ground, I know you either did it differently, which is bad, and that's what will hurt you, which is, it's not the weight that hurts you, it's lifting the weight differently to the safe way you were meant to lift it.
Correct.
And then the next is just that if it doesn't leave the ground, you didn't pull it.
Mm,
And it just takes a trained eye to know when a person's bullshitting themselves, pull them up on it, and
mm,
go, this is what you did wrong, and then get them to address that thing. And again, it comes back to that mindset of just the performance matters. How you do it does matter. The technique does matter, but the technique matters in order to get the performance out of you. Um,
yes, it
yeah,
does. And I'm hearing that. So you've touched on you need to identify yourself as an athlete. Negative self-talk can be a really good driver to these performances, and it can be something that the viewers can sort of experiment with. Like, what gets you up and going? Maybe it's someone from your past that fucking pisses you off, and you want to think about their face just before you're about to deadlift, and you want to imagine you're squashing their face with your feet. Right? It's different. It's different for everybody. And obviously, we're talking about the extremes of human performance here with diet, and we're talking about bodybuilding shows and with strength performances. But these extremes, bodybuilding extremes, can be applied to the everyday lifter, and they can be applied to the intermediate. And they are the best examples of how to change this stuff as dramatic as possible, which is what everyone wants. We want to change as fast as possible. So that's why we're drawing on these extremes, guys, to inspire you. And also, yeah, it's just really, really, really interesting.
and that's one of the things too when you talk about like the extremes, and that it's really interesting people's perception of extremes and what extreme is.
Mm,
Um, and starting with going with the training, it's like it requires any set, whether it's a low or a high rep set, there's probably only 5 to 10 seconds of that set that's actually massively intensely difficult.
yes, correct.
It's only going to be the last couple of it's a 2 rep set, it's going to be 2 hard reps. If it's a 10 rep set, it's going to be 7 relatively okay reps, then an 8 one that's a little bit difficult, and then it's going to be the ninth and the 10th that are absolute do or die, real mental challenge reps. You're talking 5 to 10 seconds of extreme effort. You're in the gym anyway. And if you put in that 5 to 10 seconds of extreme effort, you cut out the next 20 sets of bullshit.
That's
It's
perfect
like,
described.
this is all that it is. It's just this little, you did the first 8 reps of that 10 rep set for the opportunity to do the two that count. The two are all, it's 2 reps, man. It's
Yeah,
not, it's not subtracting from your life. It doesn't affect your business. It doesn't affect your relationships. It's 5 to 10 seconds of getting out of your own way and doing the fucking work. And if you put in that 5 to 10 seconds, then you're met on the other side with the self congratulations and the empowerment and the delight of, fuck yeah, I just hit a new PB. I couldn't lift that last week. 7 days ago, that was physically impossible. And I just did something I've never done before and was never capable of before because it's working. So I get validation that my methods are working. I get validation that I'm in control of my own outcomes of my life and my body and my training and everything else like that.
yeah,
And the job's done. Go home. I
yeah.
say this to all my clients. It's like if you've got deadlifts today and then some other stuff to do, and you do that last grinding rep and it destroys you and there's nothing left, go home.
Go home.
You've done you've done it. There's nothing left to do. You think some fucking lat pull downs are going to make any goddamn difference at this point? What's it going to do? Your body
No,
doesn't care. You just took it within a millimeter of its life and
yeah.
gave it the strongest signal, I need more muscle or this crazy motherfucker's going to kill me.
Mm,
Your job done. Go home. And
exactly.
that's the reward. And with that also, it's like, you don't need to train for 2 hours tomorrow either. You've done the job. Let the body recover so that you can come back the next day or the day after and do something else and PB that. And if you PB that, go home. The job is done. That's what successful training is. So in terms of these extremes, it takes less time out of your life. I'm the anti-cardio guy. We can maybe get to that. So it's like, there's none of this aerobic bullshit. There's none of this training 6 days per week for 2 hours per day. There's none of this fluffing around with mindless, boring crap and pretending to squeeze your muscles. You
Mm,
go to the gym for a very, very clearly defined purpose, to beat the best you've ever done before. You do
mm,
it, you go home, and you get on with your life, and that's it. And then when it comes to food, it's exactly the same thing. It's like, there's that meme about, you eat the same breakfast every day for 20 years and nobody bats an eyelid, but you have the same thing for dinner 2 nights in a row and everybody loses their mind. And it's true. It's
true.
like,
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
it's like everybody basically goes and grabs the same thing for breakfast almost every day of the week, never thinks twice about it. I read a study where they said that the average person, something like 90% of the meals that they eat are chosen from a menu of 12 meals. So basically, people just cycle through the same 12 meals for
Yes.
basically 90% of their life, because you have what you like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And there's a handful of things that you might chop and chat. But everyone who thinks that their diet is a freaking trip to Disneyland, I don't know what they're bloody on about. It's like,
They're giving themselves so
you,
much mental admin, making different cuisines every day, different fucking herbs and spices. Like,
yeah,
if you're
but
gonna eat the same 12 meals, just do it in a little bit more of a planned fashion. Let's measure before, let's measure after. You're gonna do it anyway.
and
Um,
when we build the diets, it's the same way. It's like, what do you want to eat? I want to get these numbers, and then at the end of the week, we'll measure whether it did what we wanted it to do. So you
mm,
get to choose the foods. If you want to change the diet, you can change it at the end of the week when you've measured yourself. But it's
mhm,
just eat the food so that you're fed and fueled, and you can get these amazing performances in the gym. You're gonna eat food anyway, and you chose this food. It's really not that, oh my God, it's so serious and I'm so restricted. It's like, you chose the food, man. So
mm, I
it's
know.
like, you eat the food that you wrote down, that you already planned to fit your life based on the foods that you like to eat. And at the end of 7 days, which anyone can eat for 7 days, edible amount of comfortable foods that they like, to measure whether it works. And the
Yeah.
measurement takes 30 seconds. So there's all of these things that people get this idea in their head that's like, oh my God, it's so serious and it's like professional athletes and all the rest of it. It's like, no, ultimately it's about 5 to 10 seconds during a workout, a
Mm,
few days per week of actual intense effort that makes all the difference in the world. It
mm,
saves you tens of hours per week of mindless bullshit,
mhm.
and you watch yourself get in shape and you actually have a purpose and fulfillment from the act of training rather than it just being mindless punishment. So,
It's
yeah,
yeah,
anyway.
it's beautiful. No, I think everything you said there was amazing. I think some people are connected to they use glue. Sorry, they use food as this form of social glue, and so a lot of social outings revolve around going and getting food. And what I try to explain to clients is, guys, you're there for the people. You are not the food does not
Yeah,
make that interaction special. You are there for the
yeah,
person. You are there for the conversation. Do you
yeah.
remember what you had 8 months ago with Joe while you guys went to the pub? Probably not.
8 days ago.
Yes, exactly. So, like, just order a steak and look someone in the eye and be present with them. These are the things that fulfill our lives, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, yeah,
Mm.
100%. I totally
And
agree with that.
Damon, so I had a question. Obviously, I kind of already know possibly the answer to this, but I'm just going to ask it for the audience. Um, when we are, say, chasing our deadlift max, we'll notice that in the first week, say we're going for a 16 rep set, we're trying to get the estimated max up. As the month progresses, as each week progresses, the reps drop. Can you talk to me about rep range selection and why that differs across the month and why it gets heavier as the month goes? Yeah.
Um, what you're talking about is not um, it's not fixed in stone. That's a method that I happen to like to use. I find it reliable, um, and there's some justifications for doing it, but it really doesn't matter. That's not a critical element of it. It's certainly not how the a lot of the program templates and Recomposer will work that way because I wrote them.
Mhm.
And but then a lot of the templates, the majority of them don't work that way. So you can do it that way or not do it that way. It really depends on the person. But to more directly answer the question, what I like about it is um, you generally when we start a new program, we'll start with a new list of exercises. So we'll change focus exercises from the previous program. So I like to change the movements and the structure of the program. So the frequency with which you will hit each primary exercise or body part, and that will also affect the volume. It's always on the lower volume side, but it affects the volume if you depending whether you're hitting something 3 times a week versus once a week, for example. Um, and so when you're starting that new program off and you've got all of these new exercises to do, then doing lighter weights makes a lot of sense because it's less intimidating and much uh, easier, more efficient, more effective to actually get into the groove of the movement to extract your maximum performance. So if you're doing a lightweight, the reps that happen to occur when the weight is light are higher. So it's not really about the rep about doing high reps at the start to low reps. It's about starting off with a weight that is manageable, that you can do with absolutely perfect technique, and you can dial in that technique by doing rep after rep after rep after rep.
Mm,
Also, for most people, it builds up the confidence. Most people will actually see bigger strength gains in the higher rep sets, so basically above 12, so between 12 and 25.
mm,
Those higher rep sets, most people are able to extract a better performance because when you almost reach failure on that 18th rep, the weight's still light enough that it's easy to just fire yourself up and grind out that 19th rep, which is the extra few kilos on your calculated max that pushes you into new PB territory.
mhm.
Whereas if you do a 3 rep set, well, doing the fourth rep is 33% more reps than you've already done. It's a big jump to that fourth rep from the third rep. If you're 1 kilo off the performance that fourth rep represents, you don't get the fourth rep at all. Whereas when you're doing a 18, 19, 20, 21 rep set, yeah, you can chip out that one extra rep. It's a much lower percentage step. so people can push their bodies closer to the limit of what they're capable of doing. It's also doing multiple reps and perfect technique with optimal speed, and then experiencing both the fast rep sets that you can do when it's light at the start of the set, then experiencing all the slowdowns and all of uh, the 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 rep speeds that you wind up lifting, all of the levels of exertion required for any rep range further on down the track. So
Oh,
then the next week, we step the weight up a manageable amount where it feels heavier, but it's not overwhelming or shocking at all. And you get into the reps in the same way that you did the week before. And again, you're going to get up into that sort of 12 rep range where it's possible to maybe grind out that 13th rep that was really dicey on the edge. And then the next week, you're going to go to a heavier weight again. But at this point, you're confident, you've got a real set goal in mind of this is the calculated max I want to achieve based on what I did last week. You're totally dialed into the exercise. You've done 2 weeks of maxed out performances on that exercise. You're ready to go straight in and just hammer those heavy weights and get your set of what'll probably wind up being 7-8 reps. And then the last week is, the culmination of all of that, to try to lift a bigger weight than a physically bigger weight than you've ever lifted before, and try to get a few reps out of it depending on what the exercise is. And that breaks into that new territory of experiencing a weight that you've never lifted before and lifting it confidently. So then in a couple of programs time, when it comes back around, you've got a new level of performance to get to. And when you hit that weight on your second to last week, because in a couple of cycles time, it's going to be earlier on in your program, you've already felt that weight. It's not a shock to the system. You're able to go straight into it confidently and da, 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 da. So it answers a whole host of things. You hear other coaches talking about doing speed days where they train for speed. We already did speed on the high rep sets in the first week. You talk about practicing technique. We already practice technique on the warm-up sets, and then on those lightweight weeks when we're in total control of the weight, and we do rep after rep after perfect rep after perfect rep all the way through. You're training yourself to rep that weight in absolutely perfect technique all the way to the limit of your physical ability safely. And then you apply it only a few weeks later in an incremental path to the heaviest weight that you want to lift in that exact same perfect, safe, efficient, effective technique, but with an all new heavier weight. So really it's simply taking all of those training problems that I spoke about earlier, where it's like, what do I need to be able to do to be the athlete that I want to be? And the athlete I want to be can lift explosively. He can pump the reps out really, really fast and confidently. The technique is the same every single time, and it's perfect. And he can push all the way to an absolute all-out do-or-die rep that's a freaking world record. And this is training to do all of those things, all condensed into a very short space of time. Extract maximum progress, move on, start a new program, new exercises.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. So that's blowing me away. That is honestly blowing me away learning all of that. That's so true. Because the typical powerlifting style is, you've got your speed day, you've got your strength day. And it sounds like, Damon, you're combining all of that. You're allowing the lifter to get experience, to work within a manageable percentage of getting close to what their true maximum is. They're getting the technique, they're getting the full car wash.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything. Oh, guys, if that doesn't show that this is the best way of training for absolutely every attribute you could ever want in the gym, I don't know what explanation you need, but that was,
But
yeah.
the funny thing is to look at it the other way around. Is do you know why the powerlifters have the speed days and the max out days and the da 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 da? It's to
Why?
do all the shit that I've already trained for. They
This-
put them on separate. They're like, why?
mm,
Why? If you're if your max deadlift is 200 kilos, why are you doing fast reps on 100? You can already do fast reps on 100. It's 100. It's not heavy for you. Why
mm,
don't you go to 160, rep the sucker to failure, and if you know you need to get 15 reps on 160, you better move, boy. You
mm.
better get going with those first reps, because if you mess around, you are not going to get to 15 reps.
No, yeah, you try and do the reps. Like I remember my high rep deadlift sets. I haven't done them for a couple of years, but you almost want to try and complete 6 or 8 reps as fast as you can before your body realizes that you're tired. You kind of just want to get it done, and then you sort of grind through the rest of that set there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like the 20 rep squats. It's like you absolutely need to get to 12,
yes,
just one after the other, all the way to 12, at least 12
yes,
before you stop and you have to take a couple of breaths. Because if you need to stop before 12, you are done.
you're fucked.
You
Yeah,
will never, ever make it. Your back
yeah.
will give out, your hammies will seize. Yeah, just it's all over.
So
And these things too, it's like these, sorry, but just
mm,
these things that we know and we kind of take for granted, but these are the things that people need a coach for, or people will eventually experience. But they're the things that you go, this is what I mean about problems to be solved by your training. There's there's strategy that comes into how to extract your performance.
mm,
Excuse me.
yeah,
There's strategy that comes into how to extract your performance. And it all comes down to caring about the performance.
mm,
And when you miss the performance, looking back at it and going, why did I miss it? Was it because I'm not slept, my diet's not right, my training program's got too much volume, I came back to the gym too soon, I spent all day driving in the car and now I can't walk, and so I shouldn't have tried doing that squat workout today. And this answers a lot of questions. I say to clients, if you spent all day driving in the car, don't go and try to PB your deadlift. It won't go well.
it won't happen.
You'll be all you'll be all knotted up, and it's like, don't go to the gym and miss your performance when you know you're going to miss your performance. Don't go.
Got one
So it's
chance.
another one. You get one chance per week if you're doing it per week, and it's that you get these people going. As long as you turn up, it's a good workout. Go.
Mm,
But that's a rule for sedentary people who don't turn up. It's
mm-hmm,
not a rule for athletes who have a performance to achieve.
mm-hmm.
It's and it literally is. It's like this is one of the important things for sedentary people who are going to die because of their inactivity. It's a problem so far removed from the person training for six-pack abs
Yes.
and toned glutes that it's not funny. It's so utterly irrelevant. You're already going to the gym. You don't need an excuse to do it, but you do need to direct your effort efficiently, and that effort needs to be directed 100% into beating your best performance at each and every workout.
It does, guys. And for instance, when I was with Tom, we had a 3 day program when deadlifts were in there, and I was doing that 3 day program over 9 days because I
Yeah.
did not feel ready to train, and I did not want to go waste that session. I didn't want to go beat up my nervous system and fall a couple reps shy of what I needed. All right, the post not PB set depression, it's a real thing. You want to avoid it.
Yeah.
You always want
Oh,
to get your
yeah.
PB.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
something too for people to think about is that, in terms of your training frequency, like you just said about then, is why would you think going to the gym every second day on that program and never making progress? How do you think that could possibly make your body change better than going every third day and doing more than you've ever lifted before? Every single workout after workout after workout. Every workout's just a string of PBs. You do stuff that your body was physically incapable of the previous workout.
Correct.
And people will go, but shouldn't you train more often? I go, evidently not. And then people ask questions like, well, scientifically explain to me why. I don't know and I don't care. I go to the gym every third day and all of the weights go up and my body keeps on changing. I go to the gym every 2 days and it doesn't. Which do you choose? Who cares why? Who knows why? It doesn't even matter.
No, and like it's kind of good because it helps people do the thing they kind of innately want to do, which is be lazy. So if I'm going to the gym less, I've got more time to be that lazy person that I do want to be, right? Or spend time with family or
Sure.
friends. But when I'm at the gym, I'm a demon, and that allows me and affords me to do that lifestyle guilt free.
That's right. It's
Mm,
that 5 to 10 seconds
yes.
on a few different activities
Mm,
that lets you be really lazy the rest of the time. It's like it's a good deal,
it does.
you
It
know,
does. Damon, I
and
want to tell you.
achieve what you could never achieve with thousands of hours of mindless boredom and suffering. That's a whole lot worse than that 5 to 10 seconds could ever possibly be.
Way
You know,
worse when you stack them against each other. Yeah, for sure. So Damon, yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. So the other day, one of my clients, bless his soul, started the new year off. He was really really pumped to get into things. He's like, George, I'm hitting all my sessions, hitting all my food. I've started, doing the step after workouts for 20 minutes each time. Like I'm just ready to kill 2025. And I was like, I saw this message and I was happy. I was happy that there was enthusiasm in the message. I will never be
Yeah.
sad at that. Can you explain to the viewers why some of his efforts might be a little bit misguided?
Well, like I said before, it's that your training is only effective at making you better at what the thing is that you're training for. And there's no relationship between the number of steps that you do on a stepper and anything to do with your body composition. You don't need more muscle. You don't need less fat. You don't need any adaptive response to you just get more oxygen carrying capacity in order to do more steps. You get good at steps. In
Mm.
other words, it's like a jail sentence where you get to increase your own term. It's the
Yeah.
worst possible thing you could ever want to do. It's got no positive outcome. But worse than that is that you being an endurance athlete is the opposite to being a strength athlete in every way, shape, and form. So when you go to the gym and you do that full on set of squats and leg presses and you hit your new PBs, and then you go and you do your 20 minutes of stepping, you're putting a contradictory message to the body going, yeah, forget about that squat and leg press thing. That's not threatening your survival as much as this stepper is right now. So don't grow the muscle because that'll make this stepping harder. And this is what you see. And for someone, the reason I'm particularly passionate about this is because, as I said before, I was so bad at this and so weak when I started training. It was it was harder for me to gain every gram of muscle and strength than any client I've ever worked with since. It was that bad. I went from 3,000 calories a day to 6,000 calories per day and gained 0 kilos.
Fascinating.
My body just went, I'm going to be skinny. You're going to be skinny forever. And if I at the time I'm short, but I happened to love basketball, used to play as a rep. It was just, I loved basketball.
Mhm.
And I had to give it up because half an hour on the court playing with my mates, that would wipe out 3 weeks worth of training. I'd go back to the gym and I couldn't do anything. Any kind of aerobic activity and someone with my genetics, my body just went, awesome. I will be an aerobic athlete tomorrow again. I will be that skinny, wiry person who can't lift 25 kilos on the bench press. I'll do it to you tomorrow. I'll wipe out a year's worth of training in a week.
That's what you want.
So
Say less. Yeah.
yeah. So then when people come in, when idiots come to me and go, look, they did studies on obese people who don't actually walk at all, and they found when they started walking that they lost a little bit of their weight. Therefore, you need to walk on a treadmill in order to become a big bodybuilder. It really got me angry because I lost so many months and even years of training trying to incorporate this stupid thing, going, this doesn't make sense. And every time I did it, I would just lose weeks and months worth of progress. And it's
Yeah.
like, don't you dare tell me it doesn't happen, because it happened to me over and over.
Measured it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, there are some people who can get away with it. There is nobody who benefits from it. It's
Mm.
not meant for people who train with weights. It's meant for people who are sedentary. It's called cardio because even in the dictionary it says pertaining to the heart and circulatory system, not pertaining to leanness and low body fat, especially not in athletes. It's about sedentary people who are going to die from inactivity. And the reason they say you need to do the stepper is because they don't step anywhere ever and they're going to die as a result. So it's like, you need to train to walk because you can't do anything else. And if you train to walk, you'll probably lose a few pounds because you're sedentary. But as soon as you get a person like your mate who's motivated and he's going to be lifting weights, he's going to go to the top of the food chain. He's already physically capable. He can already walk flights of stairs. He can already walk on flat ground. You don't need to train to walk on flat ground.
Mm.
You need to train to lift weights that you can't lift. And walking on the flat ground or training to walk the flat ground or walk the steps is only going to make it harder and going to make you less capable of lifting those heavy weights because the body goes, that's less important than this endurance activity. And then there's one more thing. Sorry, but there's one more thing, which is also the confusion when it comes to actually assessing what you're doing. So weight training is not a guarantee. We need to be very, very considerate and analytical about our training once we're training, doing PBs at every workout. It's not a guarantee that you will just keep on hitting PBs every workout for the rest of time. You need to look at what you're doing. And when you don't hit PBs, you need to step back and go, I need to restructure my training program in order to get myself back on track. It's difficult. It's complicated. You don't always get it right. It takes experimentation, and you need the fewest variables possible so that you can go, I'm training to the limit of my ability. I've got my volume down to this. I must only be training too many days or doing too many exercises. You need to limit the number of things that you can change.
Mm,
As soon as you throw aerobic activity in there, all bets are off. You've got no idea whether the reason you're not PBing is because your program is good or bad.
mm,
Maybe it's the best program in the world, but you're not making progress because you're training in a contradictory direction. So you just lost that information that you just hit upon the world's greatest ever training program that would have turned you into Mr. Olympia because you went and confused the data with an activity that just wiped out any possibility of success. So it makes you stupid, not just because it's a dumb thing to do. It makes you stupid because now you can't analyze your training objectively to just go, is this balance of activity working for me or not?
yeah.
So it's damaging in every regards.
Simplicity and logic are the two words that come to mind. Is what we're sort of looking for here. No, that makes perfect sense, Damon.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no,
Don't
that's
do anything that's not contributing to the goal you've defined because it's just
yes,
going to make you confused. It's just going to make all the data
it does,
useless.
and I guess it just comes from like asking people the wrong questions, right? It's the doctor has
Yes.
suggested this, but is the doctor a body composition specialist? Do they know how to take you down to 30 mil across 9 sites? No, they don't. Okay, they just know how to make you not die. That's it. Yeah.
The health
Mm,
system, the excuse me, the, the there's the clinical range on blood tests, which you've heard me talk about before as well.
yes, yes,
And
yes. Love
the
this.
clinical range on the blood test, when it's not manipulated by vested interests, is simply what the majority of people happen to measure. And the majority of people that they're looking at for those clinical ranges are just regular, non training, average fat people who statistically are going to die of either heart disease, cancer, or diabetes. And so health is defined as measuring exactly the same as your average fat, medium, sedentary, probably going to die of cancer, heart disease person. That's what they define as health.
Mhm.
So if you go on a high protein diet, which is the optimal way to change your body composition positively as fast and as far as possible,
Mhm.
all of those, the clinical ranges that relate to eating an amount of protein are going to go out of the range because it's not the same as the average person. So the doctor's going to say to you, oh my God, you're going to die. You're so unhealthy because you don't measure the same as the average person that you aren't trying to be the same as. You're
Don't want
trying
to
to
be
not be the
average.
same as them.
Do not want to be
Yes.
average.
It's
Yeah.
like you need to measure like this in order to be average like everybody else. So, and
Stay in
that
your
applies,
place.
stay in your place. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that
Um,
applies to exercise as well. It's just sort of like you need to walk for half an hour, 3 days per week. Why? Because in order to be average, that's what the average person should do to not die. It's like, what if I don't want to be average? Don't ask a doctor. It's
not
not his
necessarily
job.
average. Yeah, no, not at all. Damon, I had one client. We lost 18 kilos eating high protein. She was killing it. Everything was going really well. And then she came into my office one day and she slammed these test results down on my table. And her urea, right, was through the roof, right, because she was having a high protein diet. And I actually lost that client because I couldn't get her to understand that we don't want to be in those ranges because we don't want to be the people in those ranges, right? you've just lost 18 kilos. Are you trying to tell me that you don't think your body's functioning better 18 kilos lighter? Yeah. Anyway, oh yeah. So
Yeah,
it really hits home when you talk about that blood test thing. Yeah. Very
yeah,
funny.
yeah. And you've heard my podcast. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
your urea level is directly proportional to your protein intake. It's a byproduct of protein metabolism. If you eat twice as much protein, your urea level is going to be higher than a person who eats half as much protein. And the day, my urea level, pretty much everyone who goes on a diet written by me, their urea level will be between 9 and 11 on the test, where the top of the range is about 8.
Hmm.
And it's like, this is normal. Mine's been between 9 and 11 for 30 something years. It's like, kidneys are fine. There's nothing wrong. I just eat more protein than the average person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it's no secret.
It's all
Yeah,
good. It's
it's
all
really
good.
funny too when if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, what's your diet like, and you go, oh, it's pretty good. Like, I have my cereal for breakfast and I have a sandwich for lunch, and sometimes I eat a little bit naughty, but generally I like try to have something pretty good for dinner. And he'll like, that's great, that's awesome. If you go to the doctor and you say, I have 4 eggs on 2 pieces of toast for breakfast, and I have a protein shake at morning tea and lunchtime, and I have 3 pieces of fruit. I have my rice with my chicken, with my vegetables, and it's just, oh my God, you're going to die. Your kidneys are going to fall out. Your liver's going to fall out. You're going to have a heart attack. It's just the worst thing you can possibly do. If you don't have a clue what you eat, they go, that's awesome. But if you know, then suddenly it's dangerous and it's going to kill you.
Yeah,
And
like, who's
it
this
actually,
autistic bastard?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous because as soon as you do it deliberately, then it's become an intervention, and you shouldn't be engaged in interventions on yourself. So as long as you just eat whatever crap happens to pass your lips when you feel like it, you're doing great, son.
You're doing great.
But as
Yeah.
soon as you actually eat intelligently and you actually worry about what you're eating and you eat all the right things,
Yeah.
you're doing bad.
I
It's
hate it.
nuts.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So something before, Damon, that you said really interested me, and I've made a mental note to come back to it. So we're backtracking a little bit here.
sure.
When you were jumping on stage, okay. So for the audience, you were eating 4,000 calories. Okay. Now, by your normal calories in, calories out way of dieting, this would actually be a surplus. Damon should have been getting fat. Okay. Damon, why weren't you getting fat? Why were you the most ripped bastard on that stage? Tell me.
Because it's the calorie in, calorie out nonsense. Again, it's everything is training, even what you eat. You train your body to run on whatever you happen to feed it. There are homeless people who live on turpentine. Like, the body is an amazing adaptive organism. There are people in Africa who live on dirt. They're not in great shape and their blood tests look absolutely awful, obviously, but it's like, it's incredible the capacity of the human body to survive despite whatever happens to happen.
Mm,
So if the basal metabolic rate standard for every living human being was actually accurate, then everybody who got, stuck in the desert or on a desert island would be dead within a few days because they burnt through this many calories. It doesn't work that way. Your body adapts to what you train it to do. So in my case, like I said, I made a list of food back when in the early days of doing what I do. I made a list of food. I ate it every single day, and if it didn't work, I added the food to it. Over a period of time, my body was just adapted to living on over 6,000 calories per day because I ate it religiously every single day. And
mm,
people might ask questions going, oh, you didn't absorb all of it, or these other excuses. And it's just sort of like, I don't know and I don't care. I just know I stick this much food on the list down my neck every day. And this is what happens to my body composition and my performances in the gym. End of
mm,
story. It's I can't change my absorption or anything else in a way that gets me the same result, so I don't care about it. I just worry about what I can measure and affect. And so if I'm running on 6,000 calories per day, or it had come down to, like you read,
it was about
5
5.
something thousand calories per day, and in coming down from 7,000 calories a day to 5,000 calories a day, because my body was used to running on 7,000 calories a day, it just got leaner. Each time I dropped down a little bit, there was an adaptive response to become a slightly smaller organism. My training said, no, I need to keep lifting these weights. So the only thing to come off the top was the fat, because the body either burns the fat or the muscle. The training said, can't touch the muscle. So the fat came off. So, and because I measured it, it was just a case of it came down and I looked better. And then when it stopped, let's drop a couple of hundred calories more food out of the diet. And
Mm.
you'd drop a few hundred calories out and you'd watch the fat come off. You'd keep your performances in the gym. Cool. Once
Mm.
I'm adapted, drop it down again. And it was methodical and relevant. It's like, my metabolism is my metabolism. It's not anybody else's. I don't need a doctor in Germany who did a study on a bunch of fat people to tell me how many calories I need.
Mm.
I've measured it because I trained my body to run on it.
Yes, 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 yes. I love that so much. You described that really well. So,
Yeah.
guys out there, a lot of what I see a lot of the time is people will start a cut and they get into this habit of they find this basal metabolic rate online. They put in their height, their weight, bunch of measurements, and it'll tell them. I think mine is it'll say it's 2,400, right?
Yeah.
And I probably burn about 600 to 800 per day. I'm eating almost 4,000 calories. So I technically should be gaining fat like a psychopath every single week. Okay. But I'm not.
But this, no, sorry to interrupt, but it's like you should be gaining according to that. You should be gaining weight,
Yes.
not fat. They
Mm,
don't discriminate. And this is another thing with, I see it's made a bit of a comeback, on social media and amongst coaches talking about calorie deficits and calorie surpluses. Like
mm,
there's this absolute level. And it's like a deficit or a surplus is just like a national budget. It's not like there's an amount that every country runs on, and a bit more than that is a surplus and a bit less is a deficit.
mhm,
It depends on you. It depends on what you've trained to run on. And what you've trained to run on depends on how your body responded when you added the extra food to it. It's an adaptive process. When you add food to the body, the logical adaptive response is to become a larger organism in order to sustain all of the extra nutrients and chemicals processing around that. But it doesn't have to. It can
mm,
do whatever it wants to. It can poo it out the back end without absorbing it. It could burn it off by increasing heat. There's 1,000 mechanisms by which the body can do whatever it wants to do. And similarly, we all know of people who have dropped their calories and gained weight. We all know people who have increased their calories and lost weight. The idea that this calorie mathematic crap is of any use to a person ahead of time is a complete and utter lie. And everybody damn well knows it because it never works. Never ever has anyone ever gone, I'm going to eat this and this will happen to my weight.
mm,
It just doesn't. It's not predictable because it doesn't work that way.
mhm,
So the point of this is, when you understand that it's an adaptive response, then you can also look at the fact that your strength performance in the gym is what's related to the portion of you that's muscle mass. You don't want to see a kilo of weight loss per week, because chances are at that speed, your strength will fall off, which means your muscle falls off, which means you're as fat as you were before, but you're just less muscular and you've
mm,
got work to do. The You didn't initiate a positive adaptive response when you're losing a kilo per week. You
mhm,
simply starved the body and it just went into full DEFCON 4 burn off everything to stay alive kind of mode.
yes.
So you should have control over what you're eating in the first place, and then manipulate whichever way you want from that. If you want to gain weight, add some calories to it and then measure what happens. And if it wasn't enough, add some more to it and measure what happens. And if it's not enough, measure what happens. You can't just call X calories a surplus or deficit, because it's relative to something. And as soon as you've been doing any number of calories for a period of time, that becomes your new normal. Any
Mm,
person who can consume 10,000 calories per day will probably gain weight very rapidly for the first couple of weeks, then less rapidly. And finally, they will just be whatever they are, steady for the rest of time on 10,000 calories if you just keep eating the same 10,000 calories every day.
mm,
It's your body just adapts to it. So the the only usefulness of the calorie measurement thing is in relationship to what you were doing yourself previously. It's an adjustment off your own base.
A metabolism deficit or surplus that you have trained. Your metabolism surplus, your metabolism deficit.
Correct. Yeah. A surplus is only, you only know after the fact whether you had a surplus because you gained weight. If you didn't gain weight, it wasn't a surplus.
Yes.
Just like it's just like if you earn money and you don't wind up with any more savings, there wasn't a surplus. You just squandered it. It doesn't matter where you squandered it. There's no surplus because you don't have any more savings. And the same thing with the deficit is just if you pull calories out and you don't lose any weight, I'm sorry, it wasn't a deficit. Why wasn't it a deficit? Who the hell knows? But you only have one option now, and that's to drop even further. And it's relative to wherever you were.
And you only have certainty with what's going on if you are being consistent across a 7-day period, eating the same quantities of the same foods that you've chosen.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's why we...
You probably don't. Yeah, you want to keep this podcast about training. We can talk about diet in another one.
We've kind of just gone off on different tangents, but I really, really enjoy it, and I think I do actually have another nutrition question / case study. So a lot of the viewers might be familiar with Sam Sulek, who is a well-known fitness influencer, and so I think he's about 5'11". When he's bulking, he's, what do they say? They say poundage. I don't know, 240-ish pounds. Yeah, he's over 10. He's about 110 kilos. Yeah, so he's currently prepping for a bodybuilding show, and he had a guy, a really well-known bodybuilder from a couple of decades ago, Jay Cutler, come and assess his physique, right? And so upon assessing his physique, he was 10 weeks out, and Jay said not to fully stress, but that he did have a little bit of work to do. And so Sam's response to this, 10 weeks out, he was eating 2,000 calories. Okay, he dropped to 2,000. Now, crazy, right? Crazy. That behemoth of a man is on 2,000 calories.
Very common. Yeah.
Now, Damon, if you were to step in, Jay's gone. It's now 9 weeks till show. How could you resurrect this issue?
I couldn't.
You don't think so? Yeah.
The issue is it's like, at that point, it's a crapshoot. It's like maybe he gets in shape, maybe he doesn't. And in Sam's case, because he's famously, spoken about the drug use. It's like if you've got open slather on the drugs that you're using, you throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at it, and you see what sticks. It's just there's it's what I said to you before, that if you're too fat, too close to the competition, don't compete. No one's putting a gun to your head to go, you have to stand on stage or I'm going to kill you. It's like, if you look like shit, don't stand on stage. Really simple. If you're going to go run a marathon and you don't have the endurance to run the marathon, just don't enter the marathon.
Don't do it.
It's really easy. And if you were Sam Sulek and you got to 2 weeks out from the competition and you weren't in shape, why would you be embarrassed to just go, cock that one up? Probably shouldn't have done that. I'm going to finish my prep. I'm going to put the food back in. I'm going to, rebuild my body, reassess, find a comp, in the future, and I'll go for that one. But I learned a lot, and I learned, don't do this because it doesn't work. Don't drop to 2,000 calories when you're 110 kilo. I mean, it's another one of those things that I've had these discussions with guys in the past as well. And it's just like, it might not be Sam, but back in the day when people actually came off steroids, you would just go, okay, so let me understand this. You're, let's say, drug-free, 20 weeks out from a bodybuilding competition, and you've got 10% body fat, and you need to, let's just say 5%, you need to stand on stage. So you do the math on it. It's like you've got 5 kilos of fat to lose in the next 20 weeks when you actually do the numbers. It's really not a lot, dude, all right? So what does that average out at? 1/4 kilo of fat per week. It's really not a lot. You got to drop 1/4 kilo per week and make sure you keep your strength. It's really not that hard. Now, apparently, and we know it's a fact that it's true, taking steroids, whatever they are, from anabolics to, androgenic steroids, as strong or as weak for the lay people as you want to get to, they partition food. So the food that you're already eating is going to get preferentially directed into the muscle compartment and away from the fat compartment. And they accelerate fat burning as well. So if you did nothing different 20 weeks out, except whacked your steroids in there, and let's say it's something like stanozolol or something, or Masteron or something that doesn't make you retain water and gain lots of fluid and blah, 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 blah. But if that's all that you did on the first, it's like you're telling me that you won't get that quarter of a kilo of fat loss effect from that per week for at least the first few weeks? Of course you would. No calorie drop, no increase of training, no need to do aerobics or anything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got clenbuterol to throw in there. And you're really telling me that the clen is so pathetically weak that it won't pull that quarter of a kilo off you each week doing nothing else? You're telling me you don't get leaner on clen from a base of you're already lean, you're already on a clean diet, you're already training well. You're telling me taking clen won't pull the fat off of you? Of course it will. Then you've got your growth hormone. What does the growth hormone do? Even more of the same. And you're going, why are all of these guys doing all of these things at once? They're on 5,000 calories. They suddenly throw in steroids, growth hormone, clenbuterol, thyroid hormone, and cardio, and drop their calories to 2,000. You remember what I was saying before about planning out that each week down to 30 mils and just going, you use the least of your ammunition that you need. You know, if you think about it like a war, you want to kill the enemy. You don't throw everything at the enemy in the first week. You start with your weakest, easiest. If you can fucking kill the enemy with your just bullets, awesome, job done. And I've kept all of the rest of my arsenal in reserve for another time.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. And so, and using that as the example, if you're the army that just burnt all of its ammo in the first weeks and now you're 10 weeks out, you're completely exhausted, but you've got 10 weeks to go.
Yeah.
I can't fix that.
Gotcha. You're just further killing yourself, further doing that. So you're saying it comes from a better lead up, and that you don't have to shoot all of your shots and just leave yourself with no ammunition, because nothing will happen. Once you've used all your ammo, there's nothing left, right? So he actually does have no options. His only option is to go less food, which is going to make him smaller. His strength performances are going to drop, and he's just going to look so cracked.
Well, not necessarily, and that's the thing. But it's like when you said, "What would I do?" and it's what would I do is just like keep going, just keep tossing the rest of your ammo at it and see what happens. It's like your calories can't go any lower. I could, a few years ago, I helped a friend of mine 3 weeks out from a natural bodybuilding show, and things had stalled out, and he was at 37 mil, and he's like, what could you do? And I said, like, nothing now. It's 3 weeks. And I said, let me, tell me everything that you're doing. Yeah. And so we went through that, and I said, what supplements are you using? And he's like, well, I'm using this intra-workout powder, and I'm using my BCAAs at 30 grams a day, and I'm using, this, that, and the other thing, natural, but supplement sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of like, look, dunno. But if it was me, I'd be getting rid of the BCAAs, which are just a complete waste of time and money. And I'd be getting rid of the intra-workout stuff, because if nothing else, all the coloring and flavoring and sweetener and crap in there, in my experience, tends to make people hold water, hold fat, and things not to work. We dropped that out, and he dropped 4 millimeters in 1 week and was competition ready and walked in and won the natural world championships.
How amazing is that, Damon?
So you can do some stuff. It's like I'd probably look at Sam's diet and go, dude, the cereal for breakfast has got to go.
Oh,
and
God,
that barbecue sauce that you guys put all over your freaking food, that's got to go. And you're living in America, so maybe try eating chicken meat that actually came from a bird rather than wherever the hell that American stuff comes from.
Yeah, who knows? Damon, that's
who
really
knows?
interesting. You touch on the sweeteners or whatever. So last week I was 42 across 9 sites, and I got rid of the dry spices in my diet, and I just salt and peppered my meats.
Yeah, huge.
No, 3 mils gone in 1 week.
Yep, straight away. Yeah,
and
1 to 3 kilos of weight.
So it was 1.3, but what I'm noticing as well, there's so much more consistency to my physique. Like I
Yep.
look the same level of leanness no matter what time of day. Like there's so much more consistency with it. It's
It's
like cheat code,
yeah.
right? Mm,
It's common, and that's another one that I say to people. It's like, when they ask how can I season and cook my chicken, for example, and it's
mm,
just like, as long as it comes from the ground, you can do what you want. So if you
mm,
have an herb garden and you want to cut all the grass up and throw it on your chicken, knock yourself out, don't care. We can put some, if you want tomato paste, buy tomatoes and make a paste out of it, and then that's totally cool. But as soon as you go and buy the Master Foods bottle of oregano and thyme and the herbs and spices, it's like you'll
mm,
put on 1 to 3 kilos of water weight. It'll show up in all of your pinches, and it actually has an effect on the rate of fat loss at the low end as well. So I've taken people who were losing fat, it had stalled out. And at the point that it stalls out, you look at what they're doing, and they were, one that stands out to me was like Pepsi Max or Diet Coke. And it's like they're doing one of those per day. It's like, drop that out. They drop it out and just boom. And the fat loss keeps going for weeks afterwards with no other change. And
mm,
the those herbs and spices are exactly the same. And it's another one of those things where it's just like, don't shoot the messenger. I don't care. I don't,
mm.
I'm not shorting Master Food stock. I'm not going to make any money off telling you don't buy their herbs and spices.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just reporting it how it is. If it didn't do anything, I'd say it doesn't seem to do anything. That's why I say, if you want to grow
Mm,
some grass on the kitchen countertop, some herbs and spices, knock yourself out. They don't seem to make any difference. But whatever they put in those bottles does. So,
mm. Yeah,
you know,
it's really, really fascinating. Like it's the aggregation of marginal gains. But I think there's also something to be said for if you're trying to make your food really, really hyper palatable, you're I think you're trying to get too much of a dopamine rush from your food, and you're further going to impact your association and your relationship with it. Whereas when you have more bland foods, it's more consistent. You begin to not care about it, and there's this emotional detachment that occurs that allows you to stick to it for such a long period of time because you're not looking for those rushes of fucking changing your chemicals in your brain. Yeah.
there's another thing. I mean, I don't know about chemicals in your brain,
Mm,
but um, one of the other things that I found, and I'd heard a theory about this a long time ago, that
mm,
basically, and it makes sense in my head whether it's real or not, but that is, whenever your body is craving a particular nutrient or is deficient in a particular nutrient, you are likely to have cravings for the most delicious source of whatever that nutrient is. So, the example that was given was, if you take a woman who is low in iron, she may find herself craving chocolate. Now, chocolate's a pretty shitty source of iron, but the body knows that if it says, I need a cold, dry piece of steak that feels that, is like shoe leather, she's going to go, nah, nah, I don't really feel like a cold, dry piece of steak that, tastes like shoe leather, even though that would be a great source of iron.
oh
But when the body says, I want some chocolate, she's like, yeah, we need some chocolate.
yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah.
And the point of this is that what I found is that when you get your diet balanced properly,
Mhm.
then you don't get those cravings where it matters. It just works. And even when you're hungry, you find that you are just hungry for your next meal rather than ravenous to eat something bad. And as soon as your diet isn't balanced right for you,
Mm,
you will find that's when the craving to eat that bad thing is overwhelming and just all consuming.
mhm,
And one example of this that I've experienced and seen in others as well is on lower fat diets. And
mm,
everybody has a sort of lower threshold of fat intake, that if you go 1% under,
mm,
that you lose your mind, and you are just craving potato chips and burgers and pizzas and just any goddamn nasty food that you can get your hands on, and it's just all consuming all the time. And you bump the fat up in the diet by one egg yolk or, 10 grams of almonds, and it's gone.
Mm.
And it's staggering to experience, and for others to experience as well, this absolute total transformation in how you feel day by day from this tiny little insignificant, you know, 2 dessert spoons of flaxseed oil, and all of a sudden you don't crave pizza anymore. And it's got to do with the entire diet being balanced and giving the body what it needs. As long as the calorie level is sufficient, that there's enough food to satisfy you and the nutrients are being taken care of, the rest of it's just purely psychological. It's like, but it's really, it really makes a profound difference. And also related to that are the particular foods themselves. So when you're eating a food that doesn't agree with you, tuna is a good example. And it's just sort of like, for me, tuna, I can eat the stuff, and accept the reluctance that I feel to eat my next meal if it has tuna in it is just, it's overwhelming. And it's like I can push myself through to eat it for a number of days before it's just like I'm pushing that meal further and further out until I get hungry, at which point I want to eat something naughty off my diet because I just don't want to eat the tuna. And it's not, excuse me, it's not that it's the fish or the tuna that's the problem, it would seem to me. This is, again, a guess based on a lot of observation, but it's food that has something in it that profoundly disagrees with your system. And I've seen the same thing with processed foods, that it's like when you put them in the person's diet day after day after day, the reluctance to eat that thing can be severe. I had the same years ago with steak that I was buying from the supermarket, from Coles. And I was having a kilo of steak per day, which most people would be going, wow, that's a lot of meat. But it's like, yeah, that was my normal diet. But I'd gotten to this point where it was really, really hard to bring myself to get through my steak. And the last steak meal of the day was getting bigger and bigger as I was eating less and less in the earlier meals. And then a friend of mine told me about this particular butcher where he says the meat's really, really good. So I went and I saw Max. I still remember Max by name because I shopped there for a few years. And I remember buying the meat off him and getting it home and like picking out this piece of rump steak, and like it was like falling between my fingers. It was so tender. And I'm like, this doesn't look like the steak that I normally buy from the supermarket. That normally sits like a piece of wood on my hand. And it's like, it's a kind of red color, which is not the same color as the meat from the supermarket either. It's and then I dropped it in the frying pan and it goes, it was the loudest piece of steak that I'd ever seen. I'm like, it doesn't even sound like the steak that I'm cooking from the supermarket.
It's talking to you.
And then I ate the first piece of it, and it was a chore to stop at half a kilo. So I want to eat the whole kilo in this one meal. And as soon as I changed to his meal, a kilo of meat per day was barely enough. It was completely different. And he told me stories about the amount of preservative that happened to go into certain companies from the people who supply them with preservative and yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what the difference is, but I know there was a difference because of how it affected me. And so and my clients, it was the same thing with common things. Cage eggs. It's like, if you're on a diet, I eat 12 whole eggs a day, have done for years and years, all my life, all of my bodybuilding life, and up to 24. But I can't eat 12 cage eggs per day. I'm literally retching. I just can't do it. I don't know what the difference is. It's not a snobbery thing. It's just not settling in my stomach. And it's not cage eggs. There are some of these so-called free-range eggs that don't seem to be the same as other free-range eggs. And it's the same effect. But good eggs, I crave eggs. When I get hungry, I just want a bowl of fried eggs with rice mixed through with lots of salt. It's just like that, just satisfies my body to a T, And the quality of food does count, and you start to learn these things when you plan and measure your diet, and
Mm-hmm.
you actually then get to change one variable at a time and just go, this is interesting, I feel a bit shit, let's try something different. And then when you've had the opportunity, like I have, to work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and you start noticing the patterns, that show up. And the master foods, dried herbs and spices, is one of them. Everybody
You do.
gains weight, gains water, pinches go up, take it out, pinches go down.
Exactly. And this is why, guys, like if you're guys and girls, when people do the if it fits your macros technique and they're changing their foods and yeah, this amount of rice equals the same as this amount of pasta, what you're doing is you're taking yourself further away from knowing what the hell your body actually loves and what you could possibly crave and eat every day.
Yeah,
So with what Damon's done for many years and working with clients is he investigating. We're taking a curious mindset and we are taking a scientific experimental mindset, which is a lot funner than, oh God, I got to eat these calories because I'm trying to look this,
yeah, for no reason. Yeah,
yeah, by this
yeah,
date, right? There's stress involved in that, but the curiosity and the positive framing around the experience and finding foods that you love, like that is a gift that most people never get, you know. So that's why
yeah.
we like to talk about this and open your eyes to it. Get curious, you know.
Well, that's exactly right. That's how I always sell it on clients, is to say, you know, you just paid me several $100s to do your diet and program. I need you to eat the food that you've told me you want to eat for 7 days so I can measure what it does. And
Yeah.
then we can make an adjustment. And it's not a case of going, if you eat a pizza, it's going to make you fat. It's a case of going, if you eat a pizza on Wednesday night, when we get to the end of the week and we measure you, we don't know what the diet did and what the pizza did. And it's like, if you want to eat pizza, I don't think it's a great idea. But if it's a homemade pizza and we choose the ingredients, maybe it is. But if you want to eat a pizza, I want you to eat pizza every single day. Let's measure what it does. And then you know whether eating pizza is good or bad as well. And you can choose whether or not you want to do it down the track for the rest of your life, because you ate it every day and we measured what the effect was on your body. And if
Mm,
you had a whole Domino's pizza per day, I'd take a guess at what's going to happen to your body composition, and it's not positive.
mm,
But, if you want a Domino's pizza, let's have a Domino's pizza a day. Let's measure what happens to you at the end of the week. And then I put the decision back on you to just go, you want to keep eating Domino's pizza? And
mm.
most people will just go, nah, I'm pretty sick of the pizza by now. And, I'd probably rather see some fat loss.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, but it's not that. It's that complete change in perspective and philosophy. It's not a case of punishment. It's not a case of, this is how the body works, so you must do this in order to get a result. Where,
Mm,
like I say, if you eat a pizza on Wednesday night, no one suddenly became fat because they had a pizza on a Wednesday night. It
mm,
doesn't seem to do anything. All it does is that it means that entire week of good eating that you did, when we measure you at the end of the week, we don't know with certainty
mm.
whether the diet was good or bad. We can't say anything about the pizza, but we can't say anything about the diet. If
Exactly.
you just follow the diet, we get to the end of the week and you go, man, I'm sick of chicken. It's like, cool. Well, we pull the chicken out. What do you want to eat instead? Do you want to eat fish? Do you want to eat steak? Do you want more protein powder? You want some eggs? Let's chop and change the diet up to give you what you want. Do it for a week. Let's measure what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, once people get on that and they understand, it's like, there's no punishment or rule. I've always said to my clients, like, I'm your coach, not your dad. Like, I'm not going to spank you when you get to the end of the week. I don't care. I don't have your fat ass, so I really don't care.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, if you don't want to follow the diet that you paid me for and you chose the food, it doesn't affect me. It just affects you. So
It's
follow
your
the diet or
logic
don't.
is
I
trying to
don't
kill us.
really. Yeah, but don't ask me what you need to do when you don't follow the diet and that
Yeah.
you paid for and you chose the food.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. It's like you said these goals were important to you. Your behaviors are showing that they're not important to you. That's okay. Perhaps we manage expectations, you know, like,
I'll just give the person their money back. It's just like, look, you don't want to do this, and I sure as hell don't want to do it. So, you know, there's people who actually want my help. And if you don't, that's totally cool. It really is totally cool. Alcohol's the other one. It's like if a client comes to me and goes, I can't stop drinking. I need to have a drink per week. It's
yeah.
just like, cool, but don't waste your money on me because I just can't help you.
Yeah,
I just
you can't get the result. You can't get the result.
even if I can get the result, I don't know how or why. It's just sort of like the changes in the diet are going to be less significant than the thing that you do with the alcohol. So I'm flying blind. It's like, I can try and see what happens, but
Mm,
it's just every time a person drinks, they lose weeks worth of training and diet, and it's just like, why are we wasting our time? Just go
mm,
drink, dude,
yeah,
or don't waste your time measuring everything when it makes no damn difference. The alcohol is going to be, the decider of things. So
exactly. But the choices that led them to your office, they keep doing, despite the fact they're clearly what led them to being there. And look, it's a thing
yeah,
that changes over time. When I first started with Tom, yes, I was binge drinking like every other Aussie dude my age. Like that was a thing. And I just got so sick of putting on fat when I had check-ins. I was like, you know what, fuck this. Like I'm gonna go 1 month sober. And I did that and I had these amazing results and a little bit of an aha moment happened. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll try and go 2 months sober. Went 2 months sober and then had crazy results. My strength was going through the roof. People were asking me if I was on gear. I was like, no, I've just been sober. Like yeah, it's nuts.
yeah,
It's nuts how much it works. Yeah.
you might have heard. I
Mm.
had a couple of clients, a guy and girl, came to me a
Mhm.
number of years ago, and you know, explained how everything worked, did their measurements, set their goals, and all the rest. And the girl was awesome and fully into it, trained like a demon. She was fantastic, really, really good client. And
Love
the
it.
guy, he's just sort of like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to take what you said and I'm just going to drop the booze for the next month and we'll see what happens. And if I still need to do more, then I'll come back, and we'll talk about it. But if I can just get away with stopping the booze, which I have been drinking too much, then I'll do that. A month later, like she did really, really well. He did better. He didn't exercise at all, didn't change his diet. All he did was just drop the booze out and he lost something stupid. It was like, he lost like 10 kilos of fat or something crazy
Oh,
because he just stopped drinking alcohol. And it's like all of his midsection he did. He looked 10 years younger too. And
it's
it was just
wild.
like, wow. Like,
It's very
yeah,
anti-aging. Good body composition is very anti-aging, guys. Like, so it's worthwhile
not
investing
drinking alcohol is very anti-aging too.
in.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Um, Love that. Okay, so Damon, I had another little area of training I would like to get your expertise on. Um,
Sure.
so there's a couple exercises which I remember when Tom was telling me about these. Now, these are accessory exercises. We're not talking about the main movements. Um, the way he coached me to do lateral raises and barbell curls, technically, I would have thought would have been cheat reps, and a lot of people possibly would have laughed me out of the gym floor if I was to do these reps, guys. Right? Tom wanted me to grab 25 kilos and do lateral raises. I was previously doing 12.5, and I was like, what do you mean do the 25s for lateral raises? So, Damon, talk to me about using body English. When would I use it? And yeah, just tell me what you know about using body English to get a result on an exercise.
It depends very much on the movement, and again, it comes back to your primary training goals and the realization that the goal of the measure of any strength movement that you do is whether or not it translates across the other related movements. That's the deciding factor. So, using squats as an example, in my experience, when you squat full depth, so below parallel with your thighs,
Yep.
then the strength, obviously it's much more difficult than squatting to say 90 degrees at the knee and above parallel.
Hmm.
But I've seen people who have gone from 100 kilos to 200 kilos in their above parallel squat,
Yeah.
and their below parallel squat has gone up zero, and their leg press is up zero, and all of their other leg presses are up zero, and their legs are the same size. And I haven't seen a person whose full depth below parallel squats gone from 100 kilos to 200 kilos and hasn't seen their leg press double as well and their legs get bigger and all of the rest of the positive attributes. It translates across the exercises whether you do them or not.
Mm,
So
mm,
um, like we said before about the tempo reps, that a person who does explosive, heavy, maxed out reps can do slow reps with a lightweight, but a person who does slow reps can't necessarily do the maxed out heavyweight. The same thing then comes down to the curls. It's like a person who can do a 100 kilo barbell cheat curl with, not a reverse grip Olympic clean. We're not talking stupid, ugly, total bullshit. It's not a curl anymore curl. We're talking about a curl with a really grinding through the middle and leaning back and all the rest. A person who can do 100, they can do the most pristine concentration curls with 15-kilo dumbbells or 20-kilo dumbbells that you've ever seen. They can do slow reps. They can squeeze the bicep. They can do that. But the person doing slow, squeezy concentration curls with 10-kilo dumbbells will probably never get to 20-kilo dumbbells by doing 10-kilo concentration curls and squeezing their bicep. It doesn't make progress. And even if they do, they absolutely can't do a cheat curl on 100 kilos, and they won't have the same size arm as the person who can, because that person is just all around stronger. So the issue is keeping the form the same, in that bullshitting yourself by progressively cheating worse and worse and worse and worse to say your performance is going up and up and up and up is not what we're talking about. That's not getting stronger. That's just bullshitting yourself.
Yes.
But there's a somewhere in between a absolute strict curl and an absolute bullshit reverse grip Olympic clean that is a very, very good quality curl that allows you to access the maximum output of the biceps and allows you to gain real strength that you will see translate across all of your other curling and like your rowing and your pull down movements and things like that. It's about finding that.
So it's a
And
primary bicep exercise, would you say?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it comes back to this thing with just like any other sport. It's funny in weight training that there's this attitude of just sort of like it needs to be ballet, it needs to be tai chi, it needs to be this beautiful, pristine, and you're just like, when is it pristine in football? When is it pristine in boxing? When is it pristine in any other activity that human beings do? Most of what we do involves some degree of body English or cheating, that you might call it. Most of what we do in most other sports isn't going through a full range of motion. This isn't a bad thing. But obviously, yes, there is a line that if you cross that into complete, clumsy, out of control, just reckless stupidity, whatever the sport is, you're going to get fucked up. Don't do that. But you do need to learn how to train up to that line, still having sufficient control, just like any other sport, where you can do this consistently, repeatedly, and keep on increasing performance, and it will accelerate the rate of performance that you get. But it's nuanced, and it comes back to what I said at the very, very start about giving a damn about your training. And when you do the lateral raises, there's a video of me on YouTube talking about Mike Luisi lateral raises. It's a Gentech video with Tim.
I've watched it many times.
And again, it's like, if you watch that video and you watch what I'm doing, am I doing fast reps? Yes. Am I using my body? Yes. Am I swinging? Yes. Does the lateral raise look at all different from what a slow lateral raise with a light weight would be? No. The shape of the movement is exactly the same. The arm position at the top is exactly the same. I'm not flapping around like a dolphin out of control. No rep is different to any other rep. Every rep is exactly the same as the previous rep, and those reps are all the same as they would be with a light weight, save perhaps for the fact that my upper body is moving, which it would with a lightweight in order to not hit my dick with the dumbbells when they come in front of me. So you go, that's where I would go, that's good training. That's useful. Because if I can do 35, 40 kilo cheat lateral raises like that, do you think I have any difficulty doing strict ones with 10s or 15 kilo dumbbells? No. But if I do 10 kilo dumbbells, do you think I'm ever going to get to 35 kilo ones with a bit of a heave? No. And all of the people criticizing heavy lifting with less than pristine form are just the people who can't do it. It's
Mm,
like it requires a lot of skill to
mm,
do a perfect lateral raise with a 40-kilo dumbbell
and care. So the care.
and care.
Mm,
Yes. And it takes a lot of skill to do
mm,
a good quality cheat barbell curl.
yes.
And the way you can tell the difference, as an example, on the barbell curl is when I do a cheat barbell curl, you see me hit the sticking point because there's a sticking point, and I'm there with my breath held, shaking and trembling and grinding, and it's moving 1 millimeter an hour to the top of the curl. And
Mm.
it's like, what part of that looks like my biceps aren't working?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
They're absolutely maxed out. And
Mm,
that power and strength, and even holding the upper arm in that position that lets the bar come back with a little bit better leverage,
mhm.
still requires strength in the movement all the way through into the shoulder girdle that then translates through into every other sort of curl that you're going to do. I don't need to think about these things. It's just logical and sensible. I got really freaking strong at curls by curling a big freaking weight. I can curl a lightweight with good form.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. I love that. And so, like, case study, guys. So when I was like, oh, I can't believe this is a thing, went away, did it, worked up to the 35 kg laterals, and I took my strict laterals from 12.5, and then I could do the 17.5s
yeah,
within a month, right? And that's
yep.
what we're talking about, carryover between uh, what you're able to bring up your floor of the exercise of what you can do strict, right?
You're stronger. And that's the thing. You've
Yeah.
got stronger. There's a big difference between getting better and getting stronger.
Mm,
And that's the thing that most people just miss entirely. It's like when a large man's leg press goes from 100 to 300 kilos, he
mhm.
didn't get stronger. He just got confident to actually do the 300 kilos his legs always had the power to do. Like,
Yes, they
yeah,
did. They did for sure. Yeah, and I
yeah.
was listening to another podcast, Damon, about you talking about one of your lifters who had a deadlift of, I think it was 250 plus, and his squat was stuck at 180, and he kept hurting his back or whatever. And you were talking about the sticking points for that, and it reminded me of the carryover that all these exercises have. And for instance, about 4 years ago, my one rep max on the squat was I could do 180 for one. Right, we went away, we did a conventional deadlift run, put on a ton of muscle. I came back within 2 weeks. I was squatting 180 for eight, guys. Like
Hmm. Wow.
nuts, nuts.
Yeah.
And I didn't squat that whole time. And so you would think that the de-skilling of not having that in your program would be a thing. But when you make yourself, like what Damon was saying with the laterals and with these primary movements where we throw around heaps of weight, when you get stronger with them, everything else just comes along for the ride because you are a better, you're a boss. You become more of a boss. I think it's
You're a better athlete.
you're
Well,
better at.
you've got more muscle tissue. You actually
Mm,
generate more force. You can therefore lift more weight.
yes.
And it works the other way as well.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, that's another discussion, isn't it? There's a lot of confusion, and one of the excuses that a lot of bodybuilders use is they will say, like I just said about a big guy who goes from 100 kilos to 300 kilos on the leg press, and they will go, getting stronger doesn't make you any bigger. He put 200 kilos on his leg press and he didn't get any bigger. And it's like, no, just lifting more of what you were already capable of doesn't make you any bigger. You didn't get stronger. He
mm,
just wasted however many weeks building his leg press up to less than he was physically capable of doing on day one. That's not getting stronger. Um, and that's where this separation has come from. The other thing, when I moved to Dubai, um, it was really confronting because the gym that I trained at, Benos Gym, is the famous bodybuilding gym in Dubai.
mhm.
And I went there after seeing Larry Wheels on YouTube, and I was thinking this is going to be awesome and hardcore. And it is. It's a crazy gym, and the physiques in there are. I mean, I've been around a lot of pro bodybuilders. We've had Big Ramy in Recomp. We've had
Really?
uh, Jose Raymond. We've had
Really?
uh,
Yeah.
Kai Green. David Henry. I could go on and on. We've had lots of big guys. I've been backstage with all the pro bodybuilders before because I've run competitions and I'm known in the industry. So I've been around big pro bodybuilders, and the guys that I've seen in Benos and Dubai are bigger than all of them. It was an absolute freak show. And shredded dudes too, like massive and shredded. I'm talking watching striated glutes, the muscle fibers in the ass as guys walk through the gym in their tights.
That's when you're
Like,
really lean. That's when you're
this is when you're really lean, when you can see the striations in the ass just walking in a pair in tights, so you're covered up, sort of thing.
That's
So
nuts.
crazy shit. And the training is as bad as any I've seen anywhere.
Really?
And if you want to put it into a training method, it's light weights with bad form, with no tempo, with long rests, with low reps, and no effort. So take every training theory there's ever been on how to succeed in bodybuilding or powerlifting, toss it out the window, because these guys do none of it. They fuck around on machines with pissant little weights and then walk around and talk lots. And they look insane. And if I looked like them, I would fuck around on light weights on machines as well, because why the hell would you do anything different? But this was confronting at first, because I'm like, this really flies in the face of my idea that, you know, you're as big as you are strong, or you're as strong as you are big, sort of thing. But then I saw the first of the guys, and you got to understand, because of the way they train, they have no training skill. These guys don't even understand what it's like to strain on a weight, because they're so strong and have so much muscle that it doesn't even compute in their brain. So then I see one of these guys one day just lie down with another strong guy that was in there and do a couple of reps on 220 kilos on the bench press with his feet tapping on the floor, wobbling around with his hands because he had zero control, because he'd never lifted heavy on an exercise like a bench press, because he just fucked around on light weights on a machine. And it was just like, holy shit. The guys I know in powerlifting train for years or decades to get a 220 for 2 reps on the bench kind of thing. And this guy's just, it's a good deadlift. That's right. And it's like, this guy's never done, I don't know if he's ever done bench press before. He looks like it when you see him lie down and do this. It's terrible form. And like the light bulb goes off, and that you're like, there are absurdly genetically gifted people on the planet, and these guys are going to be the best bodybuilders on earth, because nobody has wrists and waists as small as guys like this, with muscles that just billow off like this, that can get their training with these little light weights. There's nothing you can do to compete with that. You just can't. But these guys, if they try lifting heavy, they get injured straight away, because they're absolutely crap at training, because they've never trained. It's not that heavy weights are dangerous. It's that incompetent people who lift heavy weights might hurt themselves because they don't have the skill to lift the heavy weight properly. Exactly. And these are the people that young up and coming people go, I want to look like that, so what did he do? It's like, I'll tell you what I did, because I saw what he did, because I saw it. He walked into the gym after coming out of his mother's womb. That's what he did. These guys look like top amateur natural winning natural bodybuilders, almost competition ready, before they've lifted a weight ever before in their life. I'm serious. Some of the physiques are these Africans and Arab guys. The genetics are like I've never seen before. It was an eye-opener, like unbelievable. Asking these guys, how do I build a physique like you, is like asking Shaquille O'Neal, how do I get to 7 foot tall like you? It's like, what the hell would he know? They've never had our problems. They've never had a difficulty losing fat or growing muscle or lifting any weight that they felt like lifting. And lifting weights doesn't make any difference to people like this. They take a bit of gear, they turn up, they do some shit, and they become pro bodybuilders.
Exactly.
And these are the people that, you know, then a coach will grab one of these guys, and the guy will win a bodybuilding competition, and people go, you're the best coach in the world. It's like, yeah. really didn't have anything to do with it.
No.
For you and I, though, the takeaway message was this guy could double a 220 kilo bench press with his feet tapping on the floor without his back arched, just with raw strength and power. So you want to be as big as him? You need to get to a 220 kilo bench with your back flat, with your feet tapping on the floor, and with the bar wobbling around like it doesn't weigh anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get there without busting yourself first, you probably should learn how to bench press. And you probably should build your bench press up like the best bench pressers in the world, who are the powerlifters.
Yes.
And you get these bodybuilders going, you don't want to train like a powerlifter because powerlifters are strong but not big, which I've always hated, because it's just like the fucking sport of powerlifting seeks to find the smallest person who can lift the most weight. Of course, the person who won the powerlifting comp is small and lifts a lot. That's what the competition was for.
Yeah.
It's like criticizing a 100-meter sprinter going, he didn't run very far.
Yes.
It's like he wasn't supposed to run very far. He was the guy who could run 100 meters the fastest.
Yes.
It's like, yes, that powerlifter who won is small because the competition awards the smallest person to lift the big weight. Yeah. It's not because powerlifting makes you small, dickhead.
Yes, and they focus on the neural adaptation. I think they really spend a lot of time focusing on that.
They make up this shit. It's the fact of the matter is the best powerlifters in the world walked into the gym fucking strong in the first place.
Yes.
And Damon, they got strong by just practicing and getting good at it. They got good at accessing their strength. And again, it's if you take a very big, very strong guy who happens to have the wide hips that give him the optimal leverage for doing a very heavy squat, and the big wrists and the big elbows that give him a fucking ugly physique on stage, but let him support a 300 kilo barbell at the end of his arms, which a normal human being can't do. You take that guy and then you give him 10 years of drugs and shit tons of food, and you make him stand underneath 400 kilo barbells and bench 200 plus kilo of course he's going to wind up strong. But it's not because there was magic to the method or that it would work for absolutely everyone, because it doesn't. It is what it is. But the going back to what I was saying about the technique on the lateral raises and the curls, the same thing applies to powerlifting technique in the bench squat and the deadlift, in that you go, if bench pressing like a powerlifter is the most efficient, effective way of lifting the most weight possible, if you're lifting the most weight possible, you'll find that you can grind out the best possible performances at the limit of your ability more efficiently than using any other technique. You're less likely to get injured than any other technique. And then if you build your bench press from 100 kilos to 200 kilos in powerlifting technique, then your wide elbow bench press like a bodybuilder will similarly go up, but it will go by the same proportion, but it'll go up without wrecking your shoulders and it'll actually go up. Whereas if you bench press with your elbows wide down to your throat every single week, starting off at 75 kilos, in a year's time, you'll still be benching 75 or 80 kilos. Your shoulders will be absolutely fucked and your pecs will be the same as they were a year ago because you haven't gained any strength.
Yes.
If you go from 100 to 200 on your powerlifting bench, then you go elbows wide to your throat, suddenly you find your 75 throat press has gone from 75 to 150. And guess what? Your pecs will have had all of the change and advantage that they would have had were you able to go from 75 to 150 by doing wide elbow bench presses for a year.
Yeah.
So,
love it.
Yeah. And that applies to things like the foot position, working different aspects of your thighs. It's like if you believe toes out makes your outer thighs grow. It's like, well, no. If toes out squats, for example, it's like, no, if your squat with your toes out goes up by 50 to 100 kilos, you will probably have larger thighs at the end of it, and maybe they'll be larger on the vastus lateralis as well because of the tension or whatever else like that. The issue isn't doing the movement. The issue is whether you got better at doing the movement. So the question becomes, what's the best way to get good at doing toes out duck squats? and get the weight up on the duck squat. I'll tell you what it is: powerlifting squats.
Mm,
Regular low bar, heavy ass squats. Just get fucking strong on squats. Then when you go put your feet out wide, guess what? You can lift more than you could before in your wide stance duck squat. So
mm,
which is the best way to build your outer thighs? The awkward, weird duck squat method that you never make any progress, or the regular, strong, safe, reliable, medium stance powerlifting squat that your
mm,
strength keeps going up and up and up and up and up, which then lets you do a heavier weight on wide toes. Like you said, you did deadlifts and leg presses like I did as well, and you PB'd your squat. So what was the better way to get your legs big?
yeah, it would
Squats
be
or
it'd be the deadlifts. Deadlifts probably grew them. Yeah, the most I
the,
would
the
say.
squats or the leg press? Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Because
leg
if your
press.
legs had grown on the squats, you would have gotten the better squat. So,
Mm,
and
exactly.
that's not judging it. It's just going. It's another one of those individual things that
Mm,
you test what works. You do a 4 6 week cycle of squatting and you see how much progress you make. Then you do a cycle of leg press with deadlifts, and then you come back to your squats and you compare the two of them and you just go, wow, this
yeah.
just works better. That's yeah,
Yeah, we've done it in reverse. So about 18 months ago, I was doing a sumo deadlift run, and I think one of my top sets, I think I got up to 205 for five. Since then, we then peaked the low bar squats, got the low bars up to a 180 for nine. After previously, it was an awful movement for my shoulders. I really struggled with it, but we peaked that, got my peak leg strength up. We've come back to the sumos, and 2 weeks ago, I did 220 for 10. So
yeah,
huge difference,
you've
huge
done
difference. Yeah, and I said to Tom, I feel like I've got the keys to a new car. Doing ever since we did the low bar squats, I feel like I've got the keys to a new car, and my legs are just so snappy and cool, and it's the best.
yeah,
Yeah, it's fun.
interesting.
Damon. So there's also I had one other question. One of my clients says to me that there's a lot of PTs in his gym, and they do these different training methods, and all the people, like, they look good. They look good. And so his question was like, why our training? If everyone looks pretty good, why our training? What are the key differences and selling points that maybe some clients have mentioned to you over the years that they enjoy compared to other training styles? And what are your thoughts on that?
Um, there's, I mean, the first one is what I said before. It's like
Mm,
it's it's all very well and good that there are beautiful people in the world, but for those of us who suck, it's
yeah,
like it doesn't work.
out of the way.
And
Yep. Mm,
for myself, it was a case of I'm telling you, it doesn't work. I've tried doing more volume and I've gone zero progress, backwards, backwards, zero progress. I've tried doing cardio and big high carb, low fat diets and just watched the muscle fall off while I got fat as a naturally lean person. Um,
mm-hmm.
you know, these things don't work for everybody. They don't work for most people. Statistically speaking, most people fail to make the progress that they want to.
Mm,
So the fact that there's some beautiful people like the people in Dubai that I've seen doesn't mean that they've found any magical recipe. They're
okay.
just they're that young kid at school. You remember in primary school there was the kid with the abs and the muscles who was good at every sport
And the
and he didn't
veins.
do any
Yeah, yeah.
like everybody knows one like it and it's like, were you that kid? No. Well, sucks to be you.
Do what actually
So
works.
you got to do something different. And all
Yeah.
I'm saying is I'm going, look at the outcome that you want to achieve. It's a strength outcome and what logically relates to that. And as you
Yeah.
start progressing towards it, you see that not only does this make sense, and not only do I feel empowered that I can actually do this, I know
Yeah.
exactly how far I've got to go. I know when I'm on track and when I'm off track. It's about having the confidence and certainty as you walk the path that makes it transformative because the other techniques are all based on trust me, bro. It's just do a random
Mm,
bunch of shit for an indeterminate period because this bra, he looks ace, man.
yeah.
And you'll look like, and it worked for him, so it'll work for you. It
Mm,
doesn't. It doesn't work for most people. It doesn't make sense. So
yeah.
you're doing a bunch of shit that you don't like, that doesn't make sense for an outcome that's not guaranteed, and really probably won't happen, and you
Mhm.
see no progress along the way, you're just supposed to trust the process forever and a day in the hope that something magically happens. And it's like, that's crap. So for
Yeah.
those of us who aren't born beautiful with amazing physiques and bodies,
Mhm.
and who need to know that we're not wasting our time and effort in order to stay motivated and focused on achieving the outcome,
Mhm.
that's what this is all about. It's putting numbers to the goal that you can then get draw absolute concrete evidence of every
Mhm.
step of the way to go, I'm on track or I'm not, so I make a logical change so that you're in control of it.
Simplicity and logic, guys. I've mentioned it like 4 times across this podcast. Simplicity and logic. And I really
Yep.
hope that this podcast has been able to describe that. Now, Damon, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
yeah, is
I don't know
there,
how useful ranting ever is. It's frustrating because
yeah.
there there isn't that much to tell anybody. It really is so damn simple.
Mm,
But
mm,
all of the frustration and the fire that I get is because all that you see out there is so stupid and ass backwards. And
mm,
it's just one of the questions that you've probably had that I've had 1,000 times, which is, this just makes sense. Why does nobody else say it this way? It's like,
mm.
why do I walk into a gym and go, I just want to lose the fat on my belly, and no one measures the fat on my belly? I mean, doesn't that just go without saying? It's just like, well, let's put a caliper on it. It's this big. Let's
Mm,
do this, see if it goes down. I mean,
yeah,
isn't that just simple and logical? Why does no one do it? And it
yeah.
almost seems like it's this mystical, magical, secret, quirky way. And it's like,
Mm,
it's
mm,
really not. It's just,
mm. It's really
yeah,
not, yeah.
it's really, really not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it just, yeah, I did this to Tom. So when I started with Tom, he increased my food from, I was eating 2,000 calories. He increased it to, I think it was 27 or something. And I
Yeah.
said, won't I get fat? And he's like, no, like, just trust me. And then I came back to the next check-in. What'd you say?
Yeah. It's like, dude, you're doing it for 7 days.
Seven
Calm down.
days. Yeah, calm
You
the
know,
hell down. All right? I'm not asking you to go out there and
calm
kill someone.
and if you get 3 days
Mm.
into it and you're feeling really, really terrible, then call me and we'll maybe make an adjustment. But if you can do it for 7 days and it doesn't go quite right at the end of it, we can always pull it back. But
Yeah.
7 days. Like,
Exactly, for sure. And so I came back and I'd lost body fat, and I was like, "Oh, Tom, is this because of the thermic effect of the food, and that because it's whole foods, it takes longer in my body, so therefore it's using more calories, and therefore I'm more in a deficit." And he just looked at me blankly and he goes, it might be because of that, but it also doesn't matter because
yeah.
you've had the decisions we made together validated by measurements. Don't worry about anything else." And I was like,
Yeah.
it was a real light bulb moment where I was like, fuck, all the stress they put on us at uni for all these biochemical processes and all these things, why were they putting in so much effort towards that? This
Oh,
really is
dude.
so simple.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
I might have told the story, but
Yeah.
years and years ago, when I did my first personal training course,
Mm,
in Melbourne. It was one called VicFit, and it was a 6 month course. And they spent the first 6 weeks teaching
mm.
us the anatomy and function of the heart. And we got to around about the fifth week, and I was just pissed off at this point. And I'm just like, excuse me, but by the time I need to know where the aorta attaches to my client's heart, they're
Mm.
fucked. Like, what am I going to do about it? Like, I'm am I ever going to see my client's heart and just go,
Mm,
oh, well, the problem is that your aorta has just become detached. I better put that back on with some sticky tape and then we'll go and do some more leg presses. It's like,
mhm.
this is useless information. I'll never be able to validate it. I can't do anything practical with it. Out of a 6 month course, why are you wasting the first
Oh
25%
my god.
with this
Yeah.
academic shit? And all
Mm.
of it's just academic shit.
It is, and I
Like,
have a theory for that. I think this is why I think they do it. I think they do it to sort the boys from the men because they're like, if we can make this so painful and so awful, what we're going to do is we're going to find people that can be committed no matter what the circumstances. And therefore, this piece of paper means that they can endure such fuckery and shit for 6 months, 4 years, however long the course is. And it sort of filters out the half wannabes. That's my theory as to why they teach so much bullshit. I don't know why.
No, it's not even that. It's
What do you reckon?
bureaucracy and academia. It really is.
Mm,
It's like the Cert 3 in nutrition. You can go do a Cert 3 in nutrition,
mm.
and there's nothing in the entire course about protein, carbs, or fats.
So good.
And it's just the course is just full of the cultural significance of different foods and cultural sensitivity and this and that and workplace
Mm.
health and safety and blah blah blah, and all of it
Riveting.
just bureaucratic bullshit
Yeah.
that's got nothing to do with anything of any use. And that's what academic teaching is about. It's not
Mm,
applicable stuff. So and that's where this is so radical, because it's just not academic. It's actually taking the scientific method and applying it to the client themselves. It's like, let's measure you and how you respond,
mm,
rather than reading studies about other people nothing like you doing nothing that you're going to be doing, and
mm,
then taking the averages of those people and assuming that you're the most average person that was in that study, even though we know that you weren't,
mhm.
and hoping that something happened. Like, it's stupid. The
Despite
the
the fact that you don't want
evidence-based
to be
crowd.
average as well, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the evidence-based crowd with all the scientific stuff. It's just like, it's
Does my head in,
and,
yeah.
and this comes back to the fitness industry being part of the health industry. They're treating body recomposition like treating a disease.
Mm,
And it's like, I'm not diseased. I'm normal. My muscles work just fine. I don't need to train for activation because I walked into the gym. So clearly my muscles activate just fine. I drove a car to the gym and then I walked inside. So it would appear all of my muscles activate just fine.
mm,
I don't need to train to activate my muscles. I need to train for them to be stronger.
mm,
But that's not what health and fitness is about. It's treating everything like a disease. And because everything's a disease, it needs medicine. And that's why you need to work out, you need to know anatomy and physiology. And it's like, I'm not treating a disease. I'm training to be an athlete. The
yeah.
best bodybuilders on the planet are the dumbest people who ever walked the earth. Clearly, I don't need an education to be good at this thing.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so Damon's referring to the activation stuff there as people like to choose different exercises because they believe that it will target a certain part of their glute or certain part of their quad based on what do they do? They attach electrodes to people's legs or some shit, right?
well, in some of the studies, yeah,
Some
but
of the
it's
studies.
most of it's just made up. But it's
Mm,
also just it's all borrowed from physiotherapy and occupational
yes.
therapy. It's just techniques that you would use for geriatric cripples and comas to try to rehabilitate them from some neuromuscular disease. And so that's why you see all of this slow move and focus on contracting the muscle,
Yeah.
because it comes from treatments for people who can't contract their muscles. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, they've got to learn to make the bicep work again. So they've done studies on techniques on people whose bicep nerve was detached and reattached, and then they had to learn to use the bicep again. And then you get pro bodybuilders going, oh, I need to do that. It's like, oh, because that sounds like you, bro. Yeah, yeah, you're exactly like a geriatric cripple who had a nerve severed from his bicep. Like,
No,
clearly that's the problem.
just
Like,
add more weight to the bar, get your estimated max higher. It's not
yeah,
complicated. Go home, do something else. Like it's fine.
yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Nice, Damon. Well, that's 2.5 hours. So I think we
I've
might.
exhausted you. Sorry, with my blabbing
No,
on as I tend
no,
to.
no, no, no. Honestly, this has been one of my favorite 2.5 hours I've ever had in my fitness career. So I really thank you for your time, Damon. If
Pleasure.
anyone wants to get in touch with Damon, you have a Spotify podcast channel. There's many various videos on YouTube. I'm going to chuck them in the comments, just links to all of those. Damon, did you have any sort of parting comments?
Shut up and train.